Okay, now we are live. I was missing one part. All right, I'm going to add you here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, you can hear me. I can't hear you.
Oh, no. That's not good.
This is my first time going live on here. Oh, there we go. It was just, I needed to click my...
Okay, cool.
That's
So you can hear me?
I can hear you. We're good.
Good. And that means you probably be able to hear my insane children right now.
Okay, obviously I've got the baby right now. My husband has the other ones at the grocery store.
Oh, good. So they're only going to hear my exorcist children right now.
For
That's
now, and then he'll come back and he's going to take her, and then we're going to hear them all out there instead. So
Yeah, it's definitely the witching hour. And yeah, and my husband doesn't know how to like get them all in one place. So there's just a lot of like screaming and running around, and it's his, it's his circus right now.
That's how it goes.
Yep.
Okay, so we're on here to talk about online evangelizations, like the broad umbrella. But for those who don't know, I am writing my senior thesis on online evangelization. And can it be done? I say it can be done. What are the pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses? Who can do it? Who shouldn't? What are the rules? How does it go for us? What do we need? What do the people need? And so on and so on. So as you know, I have my little list of questions here. But if there's anything that sticks out to you personally, I want to hear your thoughts, whatever you're passionate about that relates to this topic. You tell me. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh, man. Specifically, I feel like, if the question is, does it work? If that's like the first question we start with, I would say yes.
Yeah.
With a lot of caveats.
Yeah.
I think, and we both know that, I think that it can be highly effective online, mainly because people spend a lot of time online. And it's not like we are interacting as much personally, one-on-one, human IRL anymore. And that's kind of sad, but we have to kind of fit the reality of the time. And I think that we can look at the internet in a way that is good. I do think that, yes, there's a lot of bad on the internet. And we have to be careful with it because it's a tool and you can use a tool in different ways. I think that, we see this in the church, like Pope Francis, and I think it was 2014. I think it was a World Communication Day. Basically, he just called the internet a gift because of the reach, how far you can reach people that normally would never even go up to a Catholic, never even hear. They just have a dead set mind on certain things that Catholics teach, and they would never actually hear things without the internet. So there's that. So the good, in some ways, I think of St. Augustine when he talks about, when we bring up evangelization on the internet, he talked about that the truth is like a lion and you don't have to defend it. Just let it loose and it'll defend itself. But I don't think St. Augustine was ever on Instagram. Right. So as much as I love that line from him, and to some extent it is true. We do see that once you just, put the truth out there, you can't make people accept it, right? You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so the part about giving them the truth and then they'll probably reject it, which is what we do see a lot in online evangelization, but it's a seed. So I do feel that the pros kind of mix in with the cons and you kind of just see what happens. A part of the cons, I do think, is that there's a lot of noise on the internet. And I know we can try to combat that with the gospel, with the good news. But in the process of that, sometimes we can lose ourselves as people who are trying to evangelize online. It's a lot harder to lose yourself evangelizing in person, I feel like, because it's just, when you go, people that are in ministry can attest to this. You're on campuses and people may yell in your face and may say things, but they're not going to be as harsh and horrible as they are on the internet. It's just the reality of where we are. And that part is really sad because it can make us succumb to our human, intuition, which sometimes is just to like be snarky back, be rude back. And especially if they're continuously mocking, and you will get the most disgusting, sacrilegious things said to you. And it's hard. It's hard to hold yourself. In a way, I think it's a good practice for people who have good self-control and can work on virtue, because I found that to be the case for me at the very beginning. It was very hard, and I was like, this is a place I can work on that like
Yeah.
every day, instead of like I can go to the grocery store and it's not like I'm gonna like, I can evangelize once with the cashier and that's probably about it, and there's not gonna be a whole lot of back and forth. And so
Yeah.
I appreciated that. I think that it's not for the weak, for sure. That if you find yourself to be a person that is trying to evangelize online, whether you have a platform or not, and you find it to be causing you to sin more than you are actually making an impact, like get off.
Exactly.
So that's a con for sure, in a lot of ways. But I do feel pretty deeply that, um, one of the reasons I did start, one of the reasons why I started my account online was because I was a stay-at-home mom and I am a homebody, and like, yeah, I was only meeting the cashier at the grocery store. I was
Yeah.
like, there's only so many times I can tell him about Jesus. And so I
Same
want
lady every time.
yeah, exactly. She's like, can you go to the other register, please? And so I wanted to reach more people, and I wanted to work on it too, because I knew I wasn't great at it. I just, and Catholics to kind of get a bad rap for those things, like
Yeah.
evangelicals, is for a reason. There's like this fire, but this also way of talking to people. And it's a little harder with Catholicism because it's hard to be Catholic.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, some of the things that I think are so beautiful about Catholicism, because I'm seasoned in Catholicism, can seem like cons to a lot of
Yeah.
people. And so there's a beauty and like a delicate dance to it, that I would say, like, I definitely still haven't perfected. There's people that are much better at it than me. And I do think that that is something that is a good thing about evangelization, for the people who are evangelizing. But
Right.
the bad part, I do think, is that sometimes then we do forget to do it in person, because as much as you can reach people online with the truth, I feel like the true heart of conversion is relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to do online, like the hardest.
Yeah.
Someone has to already be open to be changed online. Like someone has to be like, oh, maybe I've thought about this, but there is hardened hearts across the board online.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I know you've witnessed that. And just where you so badly want to reach them because you can tell they're craving something
Yeah.
more, but they just don't want to hear it. And whether that is a Protestant or an atheist or anything in between, because I do think that tone is lost online, facial expressions are lost online. That's another art too. I think you and I've talked about it before. Responding to people, it's not just an art. It's like a mastery that
Yeah.
you not only have to say what's true and not name call, you also have to read what you read in the most negative way, because that's how people will read it. And
Yep.
so you have to actually change your language to be like overtly kind.
Yeah. Anticipate what the comeback's going to be and see if you can squash it before it gets there.
Yeah, that too. You only have a certain amount of time to reach people, and some people just want to argue. And in real life, that doesn't happen as much. Some people do just want to argue, but there's very few people in person. Online, it's like, I don't know what it is. I'm sure they're studying it now, but it's something to do with the facelessness of it. Even if you have a picture that someone has a face, and someone said this, and I don't know who it was. So I apologize if I'm, quoting you and not giving you credit. But they were talking about how when you're evangelizing, you need to use people's names, because I do find it jarring if someone that I'm just discussing something with says my name. And a lot of times it's in a creepy, like, kind of scares me away. But I would say, like, if you use it the opposite way, it can dismantle someone, and kind of unarm them a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really cool to see that with online evangelization. I think online you can kind of see the conversation. When you're in person, it's a feeling sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like you can kind of tell they've loosened their shoulders. They maybe respond to you better. But with online, it's a completely different space.
Yeah.
So whether or not it works better, I don't know. Like I said, I don't think you can reach hardened hearts in person. But online, I think you reach the people who just probably would never have had contact with a Catholic or a Christian, that are
Mhm.
already kind of open, which is good. That's a good
Yeah.
thing. But you need to know your audience. Like, my husband's in sales, and he's always like, I don't sell to people who don't want to be sold to.
Yeah,
So move
absolutely.
on. Yeah, like
Right.
if someone's just like, yeah, no, God is dead, and you can just be like, okay, bye,
Right.
And so there's that person is for somebody else. Like that, there's a different type of evangelization that I think that
Or they're
we're
for a
probably,
different time.
yeah, we're gonna, yeah, or a different time. Maybe that person's not in the right place. Um, and I do think that online, I'll speak for myself probably, because I think that I do want to get better at evangelizing the atheist, the godless, because that is wildly hard.
Yeah.
Mainly because most of them have, like, something has happened for them to harden their hearts, and that's why relationship has to be in place for those people a lot. So it takes more time than I think a lot of us want to give, because that it's so not personal that you kind of just go, well, I don't know if this person's worth it. Like,
Yeah.
I have 5 or 6 kids, and I'm making waves with some other people, and I need to put more content out there for even the people who are cradle Catholics. Like, your audience is like definitely hones in on you with that way, where there's a lot of cradle Catholics out there. They're like, oh wow, I really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought I did, and then I don't, which I think is beautiful in and of itself, because I think it shows a lot of the depth and the richness of our faith, that even someone who's a cradle Catholic like you, that kind of wasn't catechized well at all, or like me that was, and I still had a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And so it's, I always tell a lot of converts, they're like, it's so overwhelming. I'm like, it's so beautiful and so overwhelming, and yet really, really exciting, because
Mhm.
there's just no end. And in a way that scares some people, but I love that, because that means that, the end is heaven.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's kinda cool, because it's like you will never get there here. It's the Tower of Babel. It's just like you're not going to get there here. You can keep going, and that's amazing, and it's gonna fill you up a lot and get you to the end of the race. But I do think that we have to be very careful with online evangelization, because it's like booby trapped
Yeah.
evangelizing.
Yeah,
That's
it's definitely, I think the hardest part about it is, this is a joke that Trent Horn made when he was talking with Matt on a semi-recent episode of Pints of the Pines. This is probably last year, but he was talking about how in the early stages of him becoming an apologist, he cut his teeth on like cassette and stuff like that. And he was like, God bless people who are cutting their teeth in the age of the internet, because everybody can find it and it's not going
Mhm.
anywhere. Like those
Yep.
awful early days of mine are like buried in some dusty cassette that nobody will ever know, hopefully
That's so
ever
true.
again. And that's
Yeah.
the danger of the internet, why it's so important to discern who you are in that atmosphere. Because I will say too, when I talk about, doing online evangelization, people I think of people like me or people like you
Mhm.
who are online doing evangelization, but anybody online is either doing evangelization or they're avoiding it,
Yeah.
because we see it all the time in the comments. People
Yeah.
go back and forth, like those people are online evangelizers,
Yeah. Very
whether
true.
they're being like a face of something and doing a whole page dedicated to it, or they're just like somebody in the comments who's going, I'm not really going to make the content, but I have the knowledge or I have the argument or whatever, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it. Which is why I think this is a stream, is this does apply to other people other than us. If it, would have been probably beneficial just to do a FaceTime for me, but it's not just for me. I'm
Yeah.
trying to do my thesis, of course, but I'm also trying to just get that thought process going and get that conversation out there. And you said some interesting things. The point that you made about saying people's names, that reminds me of how to win friends and influence people.
Yeah.
It always says to use people's names.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. We're
Yeah.
trying to win souls and influence people for God,
Yeah, it's a
That's
great
where
point. I mean, maybe
we're
that's where I
at.
read it. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's sales. It is
Yeah.
like the joke that I always say in like a lot of my, especially because mine's all about interfaith marriage.
Mhm.
And so I have a lot of people messaging me, how do I convert my spouse? And I think one of my favorite lines is just like, that's the Holy Spirit's job. Like, you're just in sales. Like, we're
Mhm.
just in sales. And it's sales as much
Mhm.
as but it's a unique kind of sales, because there's the evangelical sales, which is like, come, we have free pizza, come, we have this celebrity, come, it's cool. And Catholicism just, I mean, yes, I think it's cool, but,
Right.
you know, to people who are like, hey, unless you think it's cool to like die to yourself,
Right.
it's hard. It's a hard sell, you know, like, oh,
Yeah.
you're suffering. Like, yes,
The
there's some,
joy is in the suffering? What?
yeah, like, I mean, for year, I didn't, I remember my mom giving me, my Badass Book of Saints book.
What?
Yes, it's so good. But when I
Yeah.
remember reading it, you know, like skinned alive, burned at the stake, stabbed. Like
Yeah.
you're just like, I was like, no, thank you. No, this does not sound good. I'm already suffering. Why would I want to do that more? And I don't know if it takes, you know, and I was much younger then.
Mhm.
It was before kids too. Well, no, maybe it was like after one. But it just takes a certain amount of life
Yeah.
lived, I think, to really understand the gospel. You know, I mean, that's why it's so funny when we see them talk, like in the gospel, he talks about like having faith like a child. Like
Yeah.
that's so specific to me because it specifically means you had so much trust before all of the baggage. Keep
Yeah.
that trust. The baggage is going to come, but you have to keep that trust. And I think that's really hard because that's why the personal evangelization is so important because at the heart of our faith is relationship, all of it. I
Yeah.
mean, at the very heart of it, it is the bride and the bridegroom. It is, you know, the heavenly Father and his children. I mean, it's all relationship. And so if we think that we can go online and just really, you know, mass evangelize without that, it's like I said, those people have already felt something. And a lot of times they find that relationship, they find that account that is that person that's like, oh, you used to be Protestant and
Yep.
you found all this ways. Well, that's me. So like, hey, can we chat for a second? Or if it's like mine, where people are like, I'm in an interfaith marriage and I don't know what to do. I've reverted and like you have the same thing as me. Let's form a relationship. And so I think that that's the part that I think we can't lose ourselves on
Yep.
is, and like we said before, that losing ourselves as the evangelizers is really easy. Oh,
Yeah.
let me see my likes. How many follows have I gotten? All the things that are the influencers that we are trying to in a way mimic, I would say, just because you're like, well, you're influencing the wrong thing. I would like
Yep.
to influence the right thing. And so how do I do that? Well, obviously you have it's not a complete copy and paste. Some of it is, right? We know that just like from methods and platforms and algorithms, all the stuff that usually the people that are just like on Instagram don't think about. But I
Mhm.
do think it's easier to lose yourself in that way. And I think that that's hard because we
Yeah.
don't want to lose ourselves in the midst of trying to save someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
It's
that's
too
that's
easy to
new
fall
girl.
into it's pride is what it is. Going,
Absolutely.
you know, like, "Oh, I got all these comments. I got all these
Mhm.
things," as opposed to going, "I'm just the salesman and the Holy Spirit
Yeah.
won all of this," you know? But that's another part of, discerning, are you a commenter? Are you somebody who stays out of this conversation? Are you somebody who goes up front and does this stuff? And it can be an opportunity to experience that. You can kind of get that sense of, I don't want to call it inflation, but almost a little bit, where you're like, oh, I'm killing it, and you kind of like feel proud of yourself. And
Mhm.
you can feel that in a good way. Like, I get excited when
Yes.
I make a post and it just gets the conversation going, and I'm like, this is what we want, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
But it's different from having that moment, or having the moment of like, that was such a good, post.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep doing more posts like this. And it's like, no, no,
Mhm.
no, no, no. You don't want to go there. You don't want to have that against you. And there are some people who are going to be naturally, I want to say, like, predisposed in that sense to
Yeah.
be
They
okay.
struggle with pride already.
And then to just go, you know what? No, it's not me.
Mhm.
This is not going to affect me. It's not going to make my head big. It's not whatever. And then there are some people who are going to really, really, really have a hard time with it. And they
Mhm.
really, really, really need to just not, just don't go there. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and that's
they
hard that's a
comment
hard thing to
there.
push back because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people will justify it.
Yeah.
You
And
know, I've seen it, you know, it's just it's like we've all probably seen it.
yeah, and
Um,
it's hard because if you do it, what inevitably happens is your head gets a little too big,
mhm,
or it could also be a maturity thing, and maturity is not all the way there,
yeah.
and so you wind up having a very obvious public scandalizing moment that
Mhm.
kind of works against absolutely everything you're
Yeah,
trying to do, you
that's
know?
very true.
And the last thing we need is another big person causing some kind of scandal tied
Yeah,
to the Catholic Church, you know?
yeah.
Oh my gosh,
And I do think that, like, a big part about it too, like, I'm so glad you brought up, like, the commenters, the people who are defending the faith that don't have big platforms,
mhm.
because I do think that we need to understand it isn't a numbers game. Like you were like, oh no, of course it is. Like more people in the church, the better. Yes, but it's not like you're trying to knock out some like, oh, I beat this. Like a lot of times it's about beating the other person. We see these in the comments all the time. We see this inevitably it just boils down to somebody just ending up name calling, well, whatever, or I'll pray for you, or all the things we hear that like are just the worst. Like, do you even read your Bible? I'll pray for you. I
Right.
mean, I could just list them all out, but it is a one person. Like in the Eucharistic Congress last year, they were like, our goal for everybody is here. Like walk with one person for 1 year. That was the only goal. It wasn't like go out and as many people as possible. It was like just one person, because we know that at the heart of it, it's not a numbers game. It's a heart game. And if you can do that like over and over again, of course, and like these people like I listened to Christopher West the other day and Jason Everett, and you hear these people talk, and even Matt Fradd a lot of the time, when you hear them talk from their heart, you just like, oh man, you're just like,
you feel it.
You feel it. And you feel it, and it's like, it's one of those things where people hear someone talk about God and they know, they're like, how do you have so much faith? I wish I had that.
Yep.
And that's what you feel. Like, that's what you have to spread. Because if you're not actually feeling that faith in God and that love, and you're going to church, but yet you're online just like blah, 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 away, then like, really, what are you doing?
Right.
You don't have the heart. And so you don't have the heart, then you're like, you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable to Satan, because Satan is online too. Oh, he's there. And so I do feel like that is something that I have to constantly tell myself, that I haven't met many people who are online that have followings yet that don't go, yeah, I'm constantly battling Satan, because he's like, it's just, the internet is, it's kind of like AI, where it's like, there's so much beauty that's going to be from it, but there's like a lot of bad that's going to come from it too. And we have to balance it as people, as not just like the people who have followings, although that's part of it. It definitely has to be individuals that are making the choice to choose virtue over vice in the face of these opportunities. Like, as a mom, every time there's something that happens that's bad, it's like, well, this is an opportunity to teach my kid. Oh, my kid fell. This is an opportunity to teach my kid. And I use that as on myself. Every time there's someone that is just not listening, that is really, and now there's time to get out, but there's someone that maybe is like DMing me, and I'm like, why are you DMing me? And so I try and see if there's a door open, and if there's not, I can close it, because we have to protect ourselves too. That's part of it. You don't just let everyone know everything
and stuff.
Yeah, because that's a hard part too about learning when you first get online. It feels like vulnerability, there's a time and a place. I think that Christopher West talked about that on Pints with Aquinas one time. He was just like, there's a time and a place. I'm not going to be super vulnerable with you right now because we're on a podcast. I'm going to be a certain amount of vulnerable, but like, I'm going to save the other part for when it's one-on-one, you and me, and we're in your backyard talking and hanging out. And then there's the other one that's for like big platforms where they speak. And so we have to know when to guard our heart and when to release a little bit of vulnerability too. I think that's a big part of understanding evangelization.
I think that discernment also applies to how you do what you do online. I am a big thing that's been said for years and years is that one size fits all evangelization doesn't work anymore. So you're not going to create this kind of like open box, what's the word, curriculum for how to evangelize people to work. You have to walk with people as individuals. You have to meet them where they are at, and where they are at might not be in the same spot where even their spouse is at, and their spouse is the closest person to them, so it really drives in this notion of like, I have to not just speak the truth to people, but I have to speak the truth to you, Murray, and I have to speak the truth to you, Chris, what I mean? Like all of that. And to be able to do that can be difficult when you're not sure how to evangelize. And so you kind of walk this back and forth of like, how do we train people to evangelize without training them how to do a one size fits all evangelization? And how do we reach a lot of people? Because you do want to reach a lot of people, and
you have to make really good salespeople.
Right. But, how do I also keep it super personal and all that stuff? And so, in my opinion, online evangelization is a wonderful, powerful tool for reaching quite a lot of people, because you have plenty of people who are shut-ins who will never go out into the world and experience that kind of stuff or find that kind of stuff other than online.
Yeah.
It also does, you had said this a little bit earlier, where it gives people kind of like a safe space to explore this stuff, and a safe way to explore this stuff, I should say, because it can be kind of daunting to go to a church because you don't want the sales thing. You're like, I just stop, leave me alone, leave me alone.
Or you just don't, you're just like, I don't know if they'll like me, you know?
Exactly. And so the internet is powerful for that kind of stuff. I think what that means is that by and large, you have to do content essentially that is like mass appealing or mass applicable. And the evangelization itself happens best in person. And so when you're trying to kind of bridge that gap, that online evangelization works best when it gets as close to emulating the in-person experience as possible. So I'm sure your DMs are similar to mine, where like there's tens of thousands of people who follow me, but I don't actually interface with them at all for the most part. There's a handful of people, maybe a couple dozen, who I see in my inbox regularly.
Yeah.
I can say their name.
Yeah.
I don't know if people want me to say their name because a lot of them aren't Catholic.
Yeah.
But, Protestants who are in my inbox who converse with me, and it's everything from like, how are the kids? How was your birth? How was school going?
That's the relationship.
Oh, I just got this new job. I just got this new show, like whatever. To, hey, I have this question and I wanted to know what the Catholic take is. And it's like, we're just friends online. That's what the relationship is like. But there is this element of evangelization that happens, and some of them, sometimes they slide into like actual real true friendships, like I'm gonna meet you in real life one day and whatever. And then other times there's this sort of, I don't want to say a healthy distance, but like a respectable distance, where it's, I'm not going to tell you about my intimate experience doing X, Y, and Z thing. You know what I mean?
Like all my trauma. Like I'm not going to.
Right. But I will tell you this very like deep, specific, maybe controversial, I'm kind of scared to ask this in public question, right? Or like, you can tell me, oh, I had this awful moment with my children. Am I a horrible mother? And I'm not going to be like, yeah, you're terrible. Right. But we're going to have that real conversation where you get to like kind of be a little bit ugly in front of me, and I can be a little bit ugly in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's going to help get that conversation going and like plant those seeds and like let that faith kind of be drawn out, or like steep in it. I guess it's like tea, it's like a good place to let the water get thicker and thicker with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing about online catechesis is I think it can start that conversation, but I don't think it is very often finished online.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will message and they'll be like, oh, I converted because of you, or because of Voice of Reason, or whatever. And it's like, that's wonderful, but I don't think that that's the most common experience. I think what happens is they see the accounts they like, and I hope that they're going to a parish and they're meeting somebody, and that parish is investing in them. You know what I mean? And I think that's
what we hope.
The thing that we've got to do is we've got to almost have this like feed approach, like a mindset of like, the internet is how you reach the numbers, but then like the in-person, the parish is how you reach the people. What I mean?
But it's hard because, it's really interesting you brought that up, because I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day about, and I don't know, again, I like flooded with media and stuff, so I'm not really sure where even I saw part of this, but it's like, Catholic churches aren't, when you go in, there isn't like, usually isn't greeters that are like, oh, hey, let me show you all the, all the stuff we do, and here's the ministries, and here's where you sit and you do this. It's very much like you came here to be reverently, personally. That's why it's so ironic when people say, it's about a personal relationship with Jesus. I'm like, have you been to a Catholic church? It's like very intimate. It's so intimate, from the minute you walk in and you dip your hand in that water to remind yourself of your baptism. That's about your baptism. It's not like, oh, remember everyone's baptism. It's like, nope, remember when you were baptized.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that maybe our churches do need to get a little bit more, a little better at, and I don't know how you do it, because I know that it can't be exactly the same, because it's so personal that it can't be the same as like just trying to get him, because it's like, well, we can come in and greet you and smile all you want, but you're not here for my smile. You're here for the Eucharist. It's right there. Like you're here for that thing that we have that no other church has.
Right.
And I think that that's where, like, I always try and focus on the Eucharist and in that way, because it's like that's what draws, I think, a lot of people in. And of course the Eucharistic revival thing really got me going on, like, all right, this is what we're focusing on. Like, I get it. It's like they have all these problems with everything, but let's focus on the Eucharist. Because if that's true, well, then you're really not going to care about Mary now, are you? And so it definitely goes in that way. And in addition to that, I think the interesting thing that you just said made me think about how everyone's accounts are so different. So, like, people are listening to you, and I've had a few people say, like, your content has inspired me, and that's, where you're like, oh, all praise and glory to him. But a lot of times what my content is I am sharing with spouses how to like evangelize, in a way. Very, very oddly worded in that way, but like evangelize in their relationship.
Yep.
And so it's not so much about like explaining there. Most of the time I've had some Protestants that message me and they're like, my boyfriend, girlfriend's Catholic, what am I in for? But mainly it's a lot of like, how my husband has no interest in this, or my husband won't let me baptize our children, or whatever. And so it's not necessarily, especially even from my experience, like, it's definitely not well, let's go through the teachings and talk about where they come from and everything. Cause like, I know personally, like, that doesn't, most of the time when you're already in that relationship, like, it doesn't work, especially if you're intimately in that relationship and they know that you're Catholic. And so it ends up being very much like how's your faith? How, when do you go to church every week? Like, are you praying the rosary? Are you fasting? What does your faith like look? Are you walking that faith that you would want your husband or wife to have? Because if you aren't, then that there's no evangelizing in this situation, in this personal relationship. There is no evangelizing. You need to evangelize yourself. And so a lot of times I'm focusing on that, which I don't think I even really realized till you said that. I was like, oh, that's funny. My DMs don't look like that. But I do think that like that kind of boils down to relationship, but also like self-awareness of and I mean, you hear it too with a lot of the accounts that talk about marriage and even just discernment of relationships. It's a lot of if you aren't the type of person who the person that you want to marry would like to marry, then like, well, that's on you. You need to change that. And that's the same for evangelization. You want your spouse or someone close to you, maybe it's a friend, because it's very intimate, to be converted or to come to the fullness of truth. Then you have to be living the fullness of truth. And I think that that's sort of a reversion that happens with a lot of people, where they're like, oh, wow, like, I keep preaching this stuff, but like, what am I doing?
Right.
How is my relationship with God? And if I can't, the thing I have, my favorite thing that always reminds me of that is my St. Francis of Assisi quote that's next to my mirror. I look at it every time I wash my face in the morning, when I brush my teeth at night. And it's, if you sanctify yourself, you will sanctify society.
Yeah.
And that to me is like my evangelization, like mantra, like it's my motto. Because like, if I'm not, and sometimes it keeps me from creating content, which I don't know. I mean, like, maybe that's good. It's like, sometimes I'll wake up, I'll be like, I was terrible today. Like, just sitting here and there and there. And I'm like, I should post today because, it's, I haven't done it in a while or whatever. And I'm like, I'm like, I don't feel like I should, because what I'm like, that feels very bad and fake. And that's hard, because we know we all try and not bow to the algorithm, but we also want more people to see the goodness of God. And so, I do think that evangelization has much more intricate complexities to it. In addition to the personal relationship, it's like all of these things coming at you, you have to analyze and look. You have to be a very self-aware person. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
I agree with that. I think, going back to the, like, you're here for the Eucharist, I think that kind of speaks, like, there's a wisdom to having community. Like, even if you're already converted, you're already Catholic, Catholics who are passionate about the faith complain all the time about the lack of community and about how other churches have such strong community. And there's some element of, like, when what you've got is really good, you don't need to do any song and dance. I don't know why this is what comes to mind, but I think about like makeup products that have like the really pretty case, or like the really pretty wand, or the fancy applicator or whatever. And it's like, no, you don't want any of that. You want the brands that have had the exact same product on the shelf for like 20 years because it works. If it didn't work, all of the, song and dance would have gotten really boring. It's
Yep.
got really boring packaging, but the reason why it's still here and the reason why it's still for sale is because it has been tried and it is true, and that's what
That's
you
good.
want,
I
right?
love that. Yep.
And so that's true of Catholicism, but we're not just consumers. I mean, we consume the Lord, but the Eucharist is almost like a self body soul composite experience. But I think really the Eucharist tends to feed and nourish our souls more than it nourishes our body. Now, the fact that we take in actual bread, obviously there is the body component there,
Yeah.
but to be part of the body of Christ is not, we're not just a bunch of like individual little fingers kind of
Mhm.
around. Like, we're connected to each other,
Yeah.
part of each other, and so we have to have that community with each other.
Yeah.
But I think it can be hard because, one, you don't want to be borderline sacrilege. You don't want to have like a coffee cart in the narthex and be like, yeah, take that in, bud.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
and then
We
I
need
think, honestly, especially in like the more traditional, like reverent communities, there's this unspoken feeling of like, well, we don't want to be evangelical because we don't want to be Protestant.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
there's
they do
nothing.
nothing right, and you're like, they do some things right.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
if it were not effective, people wouldn't be there.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so if
And it
you
doesn't
have
you
the
don't have
truth
to
and
water it
engine of the
down.
community,
Yeah.
what are people going to do? There's not going to be a reason anymore. It's going to
Well, not
be
just that,
a
it's
distance.
who's the heart of the like, who's the heart of the church, right? Who's like, it's the families.
Mhm.
They're having babies coming in, if your church isn't
Yeah.
crying, it's dying. And
Exactly.
and who's the heart of those families? The mothers.
Yep.
And who's not I say this, but I do feel like sometimes in some places are doing an amazing job, and I am having one of those priests over tonight for dinner, and I hope he sees this and knows that he's doing an incredible job at that. But there's some parishes who the priests really aren't listening. They're not listening.
Yeah.
They're kind of stuck in their ways. They're listening to and this is just sad, but it's the way it is. They're listening to the older parishioners who are pushing out the
Exciting.
kashish
Yep.
for the, which again, you do have to give some grace to that. Like, a church needs to run. But it's like with the older people don't really like, they don't want to do the Bible studies where the people they pay for daycare
Yep.
for the moms.
Yep.
They don't want to do the women's retreats that actually cater to mothers. They don't have the wipes and stuff in the bathrooms. These seem so little, the things I'm talking about, but they're huge to mothers who go into
Yeah.
churches and go, I don't no, I can't make that one Bible study that's every Thursday at 10 a.m. because like my kid naps then, or
Yeah.
because so do you have anything else? We're like, no, that's it. We just thought that would do enough, and really we're starving for that community as Catholics, because we see it, and I see my friends do it. We see it in the Protestant community, and you're like, wow, that looks great.
Yeah.
Couldn't I also have the Eucharist and that?
Right.
It's like, that's relationship. And so like, then we're all hanging out. And honestly, I encourage any mothers who are listening, and maybe you have a friend that's complaining about this, but just like, go out and do it yourself. Like,
Mhm.
ask the priest if you can just put a table up in front and just say, rosary group needed, prayer community, sign up. And then you
Yep.
meet at each other's houses. Like, that's what we did. I literally didn't even do it through our church. I put a message out on my neighborhood, like, Facebook, and was like, any Catholics out there? And then just boom, boom, boom. Everyone wants it. And so
Yeah.
you think you're the only one. You're not. I promise you. You have to find them. And finding them means doing it over and over again. And me, the most outgoing person ever.
Mhm.
Y'all think it's going to happen in the narthex. I tell you, if you're a priest and you're listening to this, it's not going to happen in the narthex.
Yeah.
All right. I'm the most outgoing person in the world. And it was a whole year that we were at our parish. And like, you go in the narthex after mass and people are already talking in their groups. I'm not going to pop in and be like, hi, you can be my friend.
Right.
No, you just don't do that. And
Yeah.
so unless you have a playground that is open to the public and people can play in it, that's a great way to have moms go, oh, hey, you have a kid, you go here. Cool. Let's hang out. Give me your number. But like, it needs to be in that way, because that's really also how evangelization can happen. Because then you're like, I mean, how many times we've had people that, it's like, oh, I'm inviting my friend. She's thinking, about converting. We have a few converts, and we have a lot of converts in our group. There's a few that are converting right now. And it's like, come join this group where you go to church all the time, but like, meet the families that live the life of a Catholic. And then you're really transformed, because like, it's what we just said. It's people living it out. It's not just, that's what a lot of the Protestant community, they see people, hopefully, living it. And it's not just fun. It's like also people being like, well, no, I'm not going to gossip about you. No, I'm not going to lie
Yeah.
to you. And they go, wow, I didn't think that existed. I thought it was all just, you know, just like we all went to church together, and then you hear all the horrible stories online that you hear, and especially in the social media space. And I want to say, like, that exists, but also the other really beautiful part exists too. And
Exactly.
that's where we bring in hearts too. We bring in hearts by living with them, by watching their kids, by giving them a meal after they had birth, gave
Yeah.
birth. And
I think that do-it-yourself piece is so important because I've recognized that there seems to be this sliding scale of like, it's not going to happen in the narthex because if you have a bigger parish, it's so big. People are like, okay, I went to mass and now I'm leaving. Like this is the crowd. We do as the crowd does. We leave. Oh,
Yeah.
goodbye, Father. Okay, get in my car now. And then if you have the smaller parishes, they tend to be more intimate, but there tends to not be as much to do because there's not as much resource. And so it's like you run into this space of like, okay, I have plenty of parishioners, we have plenty of tithing, we can do things, but like, what do we even do to get people to come around to whatever? And it can be done. It can be done. It's done at my parish. Father Chris Axline, he's phenomenal. He's running St. Mary Magdalene, like fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
But
I love that.
I will say, for as much as there is, as many opportunities, there's kid stuff, there's mom stuff, there's tot stuff, all of it, there's not yet the cohesive sense of community across the parish in the same way that there is for the parish that we went to when we were active duty military family, because there were maybe 100 people there.
Oh.
And with just those 100 people, after mass every Sunday was coffee and donuts at a minimum. And usually like a potluck, a lot of Filipinos bringing lots of delicious freaking food that you like roll.
I love potlucks.
In the car,
I love it.
And it was the culture, and it was so easy to do that because it was just 100 people, and it's so much more difficult to do it when you have like 4,000 people. You have to have activity enough for 4,000.
Yeah.
You have to have that culture for the 4,000, but it doesn't happen if all the parishioners do is they do the crowd thing where it's like, I'm just a face in the crowd, like, what am I going to do? Like, no.
And they know it's not hard to start. Like, it's one of those things too. It doesn't have to even be associated with your parish.
Exactly. We just said the same thing. We just said the same thing. It doesn't have to be at church. You can just say, first Fridays, we're gonna go to mass together as a group, or we're gonna do the rosary after mass at my house. Like, however you want to do it. It doesn't have to be like and I hate to say this because I don't mean to suggest that you like go behind your pastor's back, but like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, well, we ask the pastor for permission for this, that, whatever. Like,
right. In some instances, the parishioner,
hey, to offer this, can I? Like, would it bother you if I suggested that people from our parish go to my house to pray the rosary Thursdays at 6?
Honestly, I don't even think people realize a lot of times. So in my experience, and with my spiritual director, who is a priest, that he, a lot of times priests don't want it associated with the church because that comes with a lot of strings and bureaucracy because of, EIM and like, having to have, like to protect people from abuse and things like that. And so there's a lot of like, and then the priest is in charge of it. Who's going to run it? Is it an official thing? We have to put it in the bulletin. And so, there's some times that I definitely have learned that it's like actually easier for, if you, like you said, exactly what you just said, which is just like, it doesn't, I mean, we need to be better at opening our houses and hospitality and realizing like your house doesn't have to be perfect. Our house is like, has like 35 children here once or twice a month. And it's chaos, and the Holy Spirit must be here because for some reason when they leave, there's really not that much of a mess. But it's this idea that it's just like each house, has it. And you don't even have to have a big house. We have friends who have just had, I'm going to do it only in the summer months when I can open it up. Or you just pick a park and you're like, we're going to meet at this park. Everyone brings something, or we all order pizza and we all chip in. Like it's the idea that you aren't, because of the amount of resources that really do go to the poor and the needy in our churches. We are not going to match the mega churches, nor should we. Because you can't even imagine the amount of money that goes into that. You can't. And it sounds great. Yes, it would be lovely if we also had a ton of money and we had the Eucharist, but like, kind of those don't really go hand in hand, right? Because once you have the Eucharist, you really start to have a heart for the poor and the suffering. And you
Yep.
realize like we don't actually need a big screen to bring people in. You
Yeah.
need food and families. And that's pretty much it.
Yep.
And like that, I think is just, it's so beautiful because then, like you said, as people kind of come in, maybe it's someone just trying out the church. Maybe a friend goes, you don't even have to come to our church. Just come to my house.
Mhm.
Like come to my domestic church
Yeah.
and see everyone hanging out. There's not this fear of like, oh, I don't know how to sit down, stand up. What do I do here? It's
Yep.
just like a come over and see how we live. And yes, you'll see these things, but it's under this not feeling of like whatever you think the Catholic Church is. Because like you're seeing the Catholic Church in my domestic church right now. And that's why our domestic churches are really important too, is because that's sometimes how we get, that's the front door into the capital C big church. And that's also a part of evangelization. You know, we don't realize that either. It's sometimes we're just so internal about our faith that, and Catholics are so personal about it that you won't realize it doesn't have to be coming up being like, hey, have you heard about the Eucharist? It can just be like, come over to my house. We're praying the rosary. And you're like, what's the rosary? And you're like, just come watch. You don't have to do it.
Right.
You know, we have that too. So I do think that that is something that the church does need to get better at. I don't have the total answer for it yet because there is all those things. It's not just as simple as like, oh, just do it. It depends on the priest. It depends on the community. Some people want to do it, but they don't want to actually do it.
Yep.
Like it took a little effort for me, not a ton of effort, but a little effort. The only reason it didn't take a ton of effort was because there was just so many other moms who were like, yes, please. Okay, let's do this. I'll do it at my house and we'll do this. And thank you so much for doing it every month. And it's very fulfilling. And so I encourage anyone who is struggling in that sense, like it just takes 3 families, your family and 2 other families. And then all of a sudden, boom, you have a community group.
Yeah.
And then it grows. I promise you it'll grow.
Yeah. And I always tell people too, as far as like, you know, concerning the put forth the effort yourself, I always tell people that there's 3 things that the church asks you to give: time, talent, and tithing. And some of us can give a ton of time, but we don't have a lot of talent or tithing and, you know, fill in, you know, all of the different options. And there's really no shame to that. If you go, I'm a busy business person and I really don't have a lot of time and my talents are business, but I have a lot of tithing. And then somebody says, hey, I want to do this rosary club, but if I'm going to do it, I have to provide coffee and snacks. And that's like $100 every time. And I don't have $400 to have this every week. Do you have $400 to have it every week, or do you have $100 so you can sponsor it for 1 week, you know, a month kind of thing? Like you can do that. Or if you're saying, if you're somebody who's like, I have no money and I have a little bit of time, but I know how to make rosaries, and it's like, okay, cool. Would you host a rosary making club? You know, Mrs. Betsy over here will buy the beads as long as she can come, you know, and as long as you let her grandkids come too. It's like, okay, great. You know what I mean? And so now you're hosting the Rosary Club. Or if you're like, I have no skills and I have no money, but I will give you my time. I'll be your workhorse. It's like, fantastic. Show up on Saturday. We're having a cookout and we need somebody to turn over the hot dogs. And it's like,
Yeah.
great, I'm there. You know what I mean?
So
It's like,
true.
you
That's so
need that
real.
stuff.
I love
And like,
that.
you can just personally assess, like, do I have all 3? Do I really only have 1? Like, what needs to be done for me to be able to give in one of these ways? And it's just, sometimes it is what it is, especially for, you know, the families with like young kids. I have no time. I have negative time, honestly, right now with my degree. I wish I didn't have to sleep. But honestly, if I didn't have to sleep, I would just be working 25/8 instead of working as much
Oh
as I
my gosh,
do.
that's so funny. I love this.
No
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And then my money is, you know, rather thin with all of the kids and all of the projects and, you know, being a college student and all of that jazz. But I have like a ton of talent. I do. I really do. I have a lot of like drive and people skills and whatever. And so I'm totally there for like the people things. That is why I am online in the way that I am, as I
Yeah.
recognize like I
Yeah.
am good at that aspect of it.
I love that you said that. That's such a great thing for people listening that are just like, well, I mean, I can't go online. I don't like to talk. I hate my face, or, you know, whatever. But you know, like that's yeah, like it doesn't have to be, it's so many different ways. Like we hear it and talk about it all the time. Like the different gifts God gives us doesn't have to be mimicked and modeled after someone else. Like we look to the saints not to copy them, but to emulate them in whatever gifts that God gave us, and to be like, well, okay, we just have to orient it towards God. And so your evangelization may not look like conversation
Yeah.
like us. It may not look like debate like sometimes we do. It may
Right.
just look like you living a wonderful life.
Yep.
And they're in your friends. Maybe you're in college. Maybe evangelization is just you being a wonderful friend and a wonderful person and holding true to your faith and your values.
Yeah.
And I promise you, it's a slower roll. Sometimes it's not, but mostly it's a slower like burn. But it'll take fire. Like the fire will ignite in the hearts of your friends, and they'll just be like, you're just like always content and
Yeah.
happy, and I love being around you, and I love the way you make me feel. Saint Teresa of Calcutta, like people like will remember the way you made them feel. Like a smile will change people's lives. And I do think that we have to remember that there's different ways to evangelize, not just online, not just in your voice, not just by posting good content or memes. Like it can just be you living your life well, which
Exactly.
sometimes can be an even better form, because then people see, like it may not happen as fast, but man, does it really sink into people, because then they're just like, I mean, you're living it out. And so that seems like it's not a fake evangelization. It seems like it's real. And I want that. I want what you have. And we know that people respond to that, especially in relationships and how you treat people. And that's really beautiful to me, because there's a lot of people in the world that aren't made to do what you do, aren't made to do what I do. And I'm certainly not made to do, like what Trent Horn does.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes I'm listening to him, I'm like, oh, I wish I had that. But I do think that we have to really recognize our individual gifts in order
Yes.
to really set fire to evangelization. And that, again, that starts with you opening your Bible and you praying in the morning and you seeking Christ in the Eucharist, because that's your relationship first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everything that we've discussed boils down to a handful of, kind of trite ways to put it. But what can I do about me? First of all, whether it's being in a certain, type of marriage, or being in a certain position with your parish or with your children or whatever it is, working on your own holiness, that beautiful St. Francis of Assisi quote, like it's not how do I handle my spouse? How do I handle my kids? How do I, convert all of these people? Like you can't make them, but you can be a vessel through which the Holy Spirit functions. But the Holy Spirit is not going to function too well if you're a broken vessel. Like you need to be clean as a whistle and in tip-top shape. And taking care of yourself. What can I do about me? Because I can control myself very easily, So what can I do about me to accomplish this better world? And then knowing your skills and not being too envious. Like don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Some people are meant to be the Trent Horns of the world, and then some people are meant to be the Saint Therese of Lisieux, little flowers of the world. And some people are going to be Thomas Aquinas, doctor of the church, and some people are going to be Saint Francis of Assisi, known for their humility. It's just there's no talent wasted in the Catholic Church, which I think is beautiful. There's no need to conform to this like one idea of what a super holy person is. Every type of person can be holy, and we all have different abilities. It's just about recognizing what those abilities are and how to harness them for the kingdom, essentially, and being okay to not being, envious. There are some people who are like, well, I want to do that. I want the praise. I want the glory. I want whatever. Like, well, you were not made for that. So instead of being like, oh, I wish that was me, being okay with who God made you to be and realizing that he knows better than you do.
Yeah.
What you can do is going to be more effective for you to do it than it would be for anybody else to do it.
Yeah, it really hones in on self-sacrifice, of understanding that that is a form of surrender, because we want to control everything, right? And so when you go, you actually aren't the person who's like converting all these people.
Yeah.
In that, you're like, but I want to do something. And it's like, well, you can do something.
Yeah.
That's you on you, you do have these talents, like you said.
Mhm.
focus on the talents. But what's funny about when you were saying all those things about the saints is that kind of a joke in our household with me and my boys is that you become a saint of the thing that you struggled with the most. And so like our joke is like in the car, it's like, I mean, sometimes they'll just be like, oh, like, my number 3 will be like, oh, number 4 is going to be the patron saint of whining. You know what I mean? Sort of thing. Yeah. And so like we
Patron
joke
saint
about
of cleaning my room.
yeah, yeah. And so we're like, I'm like, when we recognize where our vices are and then what our virtues that we're, like, oh, maybe we are very good. Maybe you are very good at humility. That, then we can also go, okay, but part of this whole holiness thing is that then we have to realize what our talents are and then also where we're weak and where we
Mhm.
need Christ to help us work on our virtue. And virtue building is like, man, I just don't think it's talked about enough because, yeah, you can pray all you want. And yes, that helps so much. But like,
Mhm.
it's kind of like the man that was on the roof and it was flooding and he was like, God, save me, and like a boat came and he was like, no. And then a helicopter came and he was like, no. And it's like,
Why
dude,
didn't you
like,
save me?
yeah, like meet God. You have to meet God there. You have, you can't just be like, God, I don't want to be fat. And then like, you're like, okay, well, exercise. And you're like, something
No.
else maybe. And so that's part of virtue is like working on it in these ways, whether it be pride and, we work on that in a way that kind of hurts because a lot of times when we're working on virtue, it hurts. And
Mhm.
so this process that we're talking about in evangelizing, it's not all, the praise and a lot of times it's a lot of like hard looks in the mirror
Yeah.
and feeling that uh, mortification in a way that creates the humbleness, but that mortification that then brings us closer to like focus on who this is about and what it's for. Because Jesus can become such, and I wish we had started talking about this earlier because I know we're almost out of time, but Jesus can become such a brand,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to evangelization, mainly because a lot of people have made it into a brand.
Yeah.
That yeah, sometimes it can feel, if you've ever talked to somebody and they're like speaking and you're like, you're hitting all these buzzwords,
Yeah.
like you hear it a lot more in the Protestant circles, but I've heard it occasionally in the Catholic circles, but these buzzwords of, I'm like drawing a blank on all of them now, but you know exactly what I'm talking
He
about.
really put it on my heart. That's
Yeah.
from the girl at
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Okay.
You put it on my heart. And I've just felt, rejuvenated by the Holy Spirit. And it's just been sitting with me. You're just like, are
It's
we
my
talking?
ministry.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you're like, are we talking? And that doesn't mean you have
Or
to have
you were
like,
just saying different things at me. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. You're just like, I feel like you're repeating something from a journal someone wrote that was like, how to talk about God to make it sound like you're holy, but you're not. And it doesn't mean people that use those words are not holy. I just mean that like you can tell sometimes when you're just like, okay, like there's also a way to speak about God that doesn't necessarily make it seem like a brand. And like again, that kind of comes all full circle back to the relationship thing. If you're
Yeah.
being real and you're talking about Jesus, and maybe that's how you just, and a lot of times it's people that are in ministry sometimes because they do get like trained on how to speak sometimes, but my cousin is, came from Focus, and they just, I don't know, she never talks like that to me, and I love that she finds different ways to talk where it doesn't feel condescending and it feels real and loving,
Yeah.
and she listens, and she knows all that, she has all the sales techniques, but with the heart. And so I think
Yeah.
that's what I mean when we say like we just need better salespeople, because a real good salesperson, and I've learned this from my husband, is just somebody who's genuine, like they're not trying to sell you something, because you don't have to be sold something that you want.
Right.
It's like, I just have to be like, where do you get it?
Yeah.
They're just like, hey, I really want this. And you're like, oh yeah, it's here. You can get it.
Ow.
Instead of somebody
Yeah.
like being like, hey, do you want to buy this thing? And they're like, I don't know. And you're like, okay, then you don't need it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do think that there is all these elements of evangelization that are kind of boiled down, like you said, to you, like to the person. And
Mhm.
if you want to spread Christ's, gospel and the good news, you do it in the way that God is pushing you to. And it's something you have to pray about too. You can't just be like, I want to do that. Like it took a lot of prayer to
Yeah.
start me, like starting my page where I didn't even want to do it. And I know it sounds like, oh, okay, well, whatever. But no, I really didn't. I was like, this is, and I still do. A lot of times I'm like, I'll just delete it. I'll delete it. God, you want me to delete it? I'll delete it, And I
Yeah.
think that that's something that has to be a constant examination of where we are in our life. Do I want to be the person who's evangelizing right now? Am I in a place to do that? And if you're not, totally fine. Like then go back into the interior. Go read all the books. go listen to all the podcasts new that may be coming out that are great. And things like that.
I love it. Marie, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me. I've got Connor who's ready to switch out with you. So I will
Awesome.
talk to you later. Enjoy those
All right.
babies who are busting into your room.
Yeah, thanks. You take care of that baby. Bye.
Bye. All right. Connor is coming on. 3, 2, 1. He's ready to go.
Boom. Let's do this.
Yeah. How are you?
How are you?
So good.
Hold
Yeah,
on. I'm letting everyone know that we're chatting
in.
about this stuff. I'm texting like 30 people.
Tell
in
the
my group
world.
chat. How are you? Is that the new one on your
This
chest? Or?
is the new one. The
Ah! Stop. My wife's gonna run in the room and be like, baby.
Little baby looking like
exactly.
that.
I was listening. I was listening to y'all chat for like probably the whole thing, and I was just like, yes, thank you, 100% agreeing the whole time. I felt so vindicated in my beliefs.
I love that. I felt like there was so much because Marie and I are both really good at yapping, like so good at it. So there was so many things that I'm like, oh, I want to say this. Oh, I want to say this. Oh, I want to say this. And then it's like, oh, we're out of time.
Oh, absolutely. That's me all the time. So this is going to be fun.
Yay. Okay. So was there anything that stuck out to you or that you had in mind when we were messaging about this before?
Yeah. I mean, the main thing that like, I really like that you guys both said is it's, obviously the evangelization is sales language is like my favorite thing in the world. Like it is just true. And that's why when people are like, oh no, why are these Protestant churches like doing so well? And why aren't we? It's like, because they understand sales. Like they don't have, a lot of them end up with people who dive deep. They do become Catholic just because fullness of truth and all that. But like, they are really good at sales. Like Jesus Christ wants a personal relationship with you is such a good, simple message. And we get so caught up in like but this anti-pope and matter and all this stuff that it's like, guys, simplify it down, make it simple. Don't dumb it down. Don't water it down. There's this quote that I like talking about all the time. I swear it's from JP2, but I cannot find a reference to him actually saying this. So it might just be mine and the Holy Spirit's. But the question is not whether the modern man can understand the gospel. The question is how we make the modern gospel using communications tools that we have palatable to them. And I've been thinking about that quote for forever until I realized, okay, palatable, what does that mean? It's like, okay, it's not palatable like watered down, because sometimes all they can take is a, McDonald's 6-piece chicken nuggets, but maybe they want a steak versus a fish. Maybe they want fries instead of mashed potatoes, and that's fine. What are they hungry for? That's what we hit them at. And that's why I love that you guys were talking about both like we have to evangelize the individual, but then also once we get them in the church, it's like, hey, congratulations, you're in the most dysfunctional family of all time. Mazel. This is going to be great. So it's almost like there's a B2C aspect to it and there's a B2B thing. We have to like internalize and fix like the institution of the church as well as like our local parishes to make them more friendly, make them more inviting. But then also it is the one-on-one conversations that we have with people just to like get people to see that like that's the other thing before I like go off forever and just spend an hour yapping. Like it's not, the evangelization isn't even learning. It's just helping people unlearn identity, truths, etc. And that is so much easier to do than trying to teach them stuff. So those are the main points that I kept thinking about while y'all are talking.
Yeah, I think as far as the like, Jesus Christ wants a personal relationship with you, and that's a really good pitch. It's a really good pitch because it is something that makes you kind of go like, what? Like it gets that interest in there for you. But it's also true. It's true that he wants that. But I think with Catholics in particular, especially like, I mean, some of the more traditional Catholics as well, we can tend to want to shy away from whatever the Protestants are doing, but they're not totally wrong. Obviously, there are.
If it works, it works, man.
Yeah. And we are supposed to have an intimate relationship with him. And that's what I find some of the most, on fire Catholics maybe will still have a sort of lackluster prayer life. And they'll say that and they're like, I'm just really struggling with my prayer life. I'm struggling with my prayer life. And I'm like, how are you struggling? How are you struggling with your prayer life? Like, is something going on in your life? And they're like, no. And then what it boils down to is like, I just lack the intimacy. And it's like the reason why so much of like what the faith is and the reason why so much of what we do revolves around marriage language is because it works a lot like a language. Like a marriage. It works a lot like that. If you don't have fidelity, you're not going to have a strong marriage. If you don't have loyalty, you're not going to have a strong marriage. If you don't have the intimacy, you're not going to have a strong marriage. If you don't have the trust, you're not going to have a strong marriage.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like essentially trying to have this religious relationship without having all of the same elements that a marriage relationship has. It's just not going to work. It's going to be lackluster. It's going to be boring. You're going to want out. You're going to want to leave. You're going to feel unfulfilled. You're so on and so on. And there's going to be a part of your heart that's just like not touched and not satisfied.
Yep.
And I think we as Catholics need to get to that point where we're, I think, better at and okay with having some more of those talks. Like, I was reading a book, I think it might have been a Sherry Waddell book, but so she wrote about how in Mass we hear, you know, the gospel of the Lord, and we say, "Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ." And usually when you hear that in Mass, it's "Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ," and then everyone sits down. And she was like, what are the words that are coming out of your mouth? Praise be to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Like, would you praise your child that way? You know, I think the specific example she used was like, if you were saying the Cubs won the World Series, if you're a Cubs fan, are you going to say, "Oh, Cubs won the World Series"? Or are you going to be like, "The Cubs won the World Series"? You know, you should be saying, "Praise
Over the
be
moon
Lord
about
Jesus
it.
Christ." Yeah. And so she's like, there's so many people who are like, "Oh, I would love to walk with you. I would love to convert you." And then when you get talking to them about whatever's going on, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's just me."
Yeah.
You know, they have no fire. Where is it?
I think that we just like, we're so scared about intimacy personally with Christ for so many reasons that like, and if you want a really hot take here, Desiree, like I think that we replace our intimacy with Christ with knowledge about him and think it's love.
Yep. 100%.
That's why like,
or is that just true?
I mean, it's just true.
Yeah.
I mean, but a lot of people think it's a hot take because it's like we fall into this like, and again, I'll go off. Like, I'm writing a book right now about this whole aspect of like the internalized understanding of what it means to be a saint and how we do that. And I'm trying to pull up the exact wording that I had because it was like so perfect. But basically, we don't want to. We're uncomfortable with this whole idea of like, oh, I have to be personal with God. And I have to like connect with him and stuff. So we trade. Oh, I just found it. We trade aligned intentional spirituality for applied theology.
Yes.
We're just like, but this is what it should be. Oh, I just need to do that. And it becomes like this dualist language of like, well, this thing is true, so everything else must be bad. And it's like, everything else isn't bad. Congratulations. You discovered a heresy from the Fourth Lateran Council. Like,
right.
This is very simple. But I feel like we fall into these weird things where it's like, okay, hey, congratulations. You want to dive deeper into your faith. Do you want to be a charismatic? Do you want to be a traditionalist? Do you want to get your degree, or you want to become a normie? And normie kind of just means you're going to become a CEO Catholic, right? It's Christmas and Easter, that's it. It's like, guys, no. And the most infuriating thing is when I'm seeing people in my comments being like, but I don't know what God wants from me. And I'm about to start this like 55-day like series all the way through to Easter to be like, hey, here's what God wants for you, because it's very simple. Grow in virtue, avoid vice. Congratulations. He'll take care of the rest. Like, put yourself in a good place, talk to him, let him talk to you, and you're good. It's way simpler than we make it out to be.
Yeah. And I think, so there's two things that stick out for that is one, replacing the intimacy with intellectualism. I think, and I speak largely for the American church or to the American church because I'm part of the American church, but I think that in the USA in particular, we have this, like intimacy is cringe feeling, you know, like I don't know if it's a puritanical idea or if it's got some other influence predominantly behind it, but you know, there is this element of like, you know, and I'm not saying all of it's wrong, but like, don't be too affectionate in public. Don't be too excited in public. Don't fall apart in public. Anything that is passion fueled publicly is a faux pas. And so I think there's that element of it too, where it's not just, well, I don't want to be like a Protestant, but I don't want to commit the social faux pas. I don't want to kind of like bare my heart here and like show how much it bleeds if somebody's going to be like, okay, would you like a napkin for that? You know,
I think it's even, I don't even think it's that. I think it's that the like, I see that, you know, know, love, serve, very simple catechism, right? We're called to all three. And it's like, it's what, why, and how. And I worry sometimes that we associate the intellectualism with like right-wing politics and conservatism. And we associate the why with 100%. Left-wing.
Yes.
And that's the problem, is you have all these people who are super conservative, great people, God-loving people, but they refuse to be intimate with God because they're like,
Yep.
but that feels like a liberal thing. Who am I, Father James Martin? Like, it's like, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. There are guidelines that you're probably not going to allow yourself to fall into, oh, now I'm supporting abortion because I loved God, right? It's
Yeah.
like, that's not going to happen. Don't be scared of God loving you.
Yeah. And I think that feeds into the second thought that I had, which is that Catholics are called to be a both and. I say quite often the Catholic Church is Thomas Aquinas and St. Francis of Assisi,
Yes.
and everything in between. And you might be more Thomas Aquinas, you might be more St. Francis, but honestly, if you just align with one camp entirely and there's no part of you that really relates to the other side, you are malformed and you need to work on that. Like, you cannot just be this, like, I know church history and I can drone on about that forever and ever. And, like, I could like run somebody into the ground who wants to try me on church history if you're not also going to adoration and like crying your eyes out every once in a while. Like, you have to be okay with doing both of these things. Yes.
Yeah. And that's the whole, like, we get into evangelization and it's like, oh, but no, we really just need to hone down and make sure that they're wrong because sola scriptura is a heresy. It's like, who cares? Who cares? You're not going to get up to the point that gets to heaven.
Academics, the higher, the loftier, we care. But guess what? Most people aren't like this.
What percent is at that? Like, congratulations, you are never going to debate James White. Like, sorry, you're not. You don't need to know that. But guess what? You should be in the gym more. You should be praying more. You should be being a better husband, a better spouse, a better father, whatever it might be. Like, that's what God's calling you to. He's not calling you to understand the ins and outs of, anti-popes. Like, that's good. Wonderful to know. You should deepen your faith. Also, go talk to Jesus in the Eucharist and don't just sit there and be like, Our Father who art in, over and over again. Like, just sit and let him talk to you. Like, I'm sorry, Lectio Divina, if that's a weird mystical thing, it's not. Like, even mystics are, all they say is like, follow God's plan. That's it. It's pretty cut and dry in like a bunch of words. It's like, guys, the faith is not as polarizing as you think it is. You can find your place anywhere in the middle, but it's a pretty big spectrum.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's an element to it of, I don't know, how do I want to describe this? We have the both and, obviously, like, you need to work on being a fully formed, well-rounded Catholic. But I think there's also that ability, like with what Marie and I were talking about, like the fish's ability to climb a tree, is it's not okay, well, I feel like I'm more Francis of Assisi, so now you're telling me I have to go be like an intellectual super know-it-all like Thomas Aquinas. It's like, no, but maybe what got you in the door was Assisi, and what's going to nourish you to get you to stay is Aquinas. It's not that you need to become him overnight, or that you even need to become him at the end of your life, but like, you need to grow more in the charism, I guess, of Aquinas, because that's not natural to you. But just like I need to grow more in being a patient mom, because being a patient mom is not natural to me. It's not an excuse for me to not do it. You know what I mean? It's not an excuse. I will continue to be a snappy, impatient mom if I don't actually work on it. And eventually, my kids might hate me and say, like, I really don't want anything to do with you now that I'm an adult. And it's like, that's what could happen to your faith if you're not continually nourishing it. Because as wonderful and fantastic as the CC is, he is not the only thing that's going to keep you like on fire. He's not the only thing that's going to keep you super nourished and interested in whatever. And
he helped you then, but
exactly.
who is the saint you need to be now?
Yeah, exactly. And Jesus is not asking you to just stay in one spot either. He wants you to walk with him. So you need to be moving. Where are you going to go?
Yeah. That's why I think I was talking to a therapist friend of mine about this the other day, that like the Jesus wants personal relationship with you, and a lot of these like Twitter evangelicals that we see, they often fall into no, just accept Jesus Christ into my heart and it's all good and well. It's like, that is actually psychologically dangerous, because what it's doing is saying, I'm going to focus so much on my past self, and that is what is going to be now the linchpin of my identity, and it prevents you from actually growing. Yeah. And it's like, guys, you are meant to grow the entire time. I love the quote that Alex Hormozy says, where he says that the work works on you more than you work on it. You're only doing these things because it's going to change and completely develop who you are. Yeah. That's the only reason you study. It's the only reason you serve. That's all of it. I know a girl who came out from North Carolina, came out to California for a women's service year, started working with the poor and like the homeless, like the absolute poorest of the poor. And in 9 months, she went from, hey, you know, I'm Christian, but that's kind of it, to being like hardcore aggressive Catholic. Not like mean, but like she's entering the church at Easter. She's like dating a guy she's probably going to marry who helps bring her in. Oh, Dad, it's so cute. Yeah,
I am hungry.
you're going to grow.
Yeah. I think I wonder too, I want you to speak more to the like putting yourself in a different position and allowing yourself to grow. Like if this chick became an aggressive Catholic, you know what I mean? What do you think draws people into that space? That, I mean, so at least I'm saying, you know, you used St. Francis of Assisi to get here, but he's not what's going to keep you here. And the obvious response to that is like, well, the Lord's going to keep me here. And it's like, yes, thank you.
Obviously.
But also just like there are certain things that kind of like light you up. And just like, perhaps to continue with this analogy, you didn't enter the church by yourself. What other person is going to inspire you to continue in the church, to stay in the church, to be on fire for the church, to become aggressive for the church? And the odds are it's not just going to be an intangible saint. It's going to be somebody who's here and in real life. And so if we're those people here and in real life, how do we do that? How do we make that happen? How do we reach people in that way?
Yeah, I mean, the things that I've seen that work just from like the parishes that I work with nationally for youth ministry, one of the biggest hot takes that I've gotten flack for is that relatability is irrelevant. What matters when you're talking to someone about the faith is value. Because like people, especially teens now, they don't care if you say, oh yeah, I felt that too. They're like, that's nice, boomer. Like, good for you.
Yeah.
But what they want to know is they have something that they are longing for and they want that need answered. Mm-hmm. All you have to do to get someone to either be Catholic or to stay Catholic or to grow deeper in the faith is say, what is that? I mean, we're going back to sales language. Why did you come in today? Mm-hmm. What is the thing that you are longing for? And then serving that need. Or putting them in a position where they are able to be fulfilled through the need that they have. Because that need is the Holy Spirit working on their heart. And instead of trying to anticipate that, we need to respond to that. That's why I get so frustrated when we talk about like, oh, synodality and synods. Like the concept, genius. The execution, 0 out of 10. Yeah. It's so bad. Like I'm one of the fastest growing youth ministry tools in the world right now, because the first thing we do is we say, hey, teens, here's 84 lessons. What do you guys want to talk about? And then talk about that stuff. Novel idea. It's the same thing. Local churches, one-on-one. It's like, hey, man, what are you curious about? Oh, well, the only reason I'm not Catholic, the only reason that like I can't grow in my faith, even though I've been Catholic my whole life, whatever it is because I don't like that the church says that other people are going to go to hell who aren't Catholic. And it's like, oh, well, guess what? It's not actually what the church says. Cool. Now let's get over that. Now, why aren't you? And it's like, now what's the new need that you have that you need to fulfill? Oh, well, I want to do this. Wonderful. Oh, well, I want to read my Bible more. Cool. What style do you want to do? We got like 7. You want formal, you want informal, you want study. Scott Hahn has written like 50 different things. Like, go for it. And so it's really just about, we have such a wide range of devotions. We have so many different like styles and charisms that do fall into the church. Some go a little far. Liturgical dancing might be a little on the edge there. However, and by on the edge, I mean over the edge. However, across the line, I'm not pushing anybody. But at the same time, it's like, okay, this is wonderful. Where do you want to be connected? What is the need that you have? What is the Holy Spirit pulling your heart? That's what we need to be giving people. Because the second we do that, why would they leave? We're serving the need that they have, that God is pulling them. They're responding to that. Then they have a new need. And usually that second need is to serve, because now they've been filled up and now they want to pour out. That's the whole process. And that's all we have to do. Like it is almost too simple.
Yeah. I think to your point about relatability, I think now relatability in a lot of ways reads as disingenuine. And I think it reads as pandering, because there has been so much of the identity pandering in recent times that it's like, okay, well, you know, are you saying this because this is a place where we connect, or are you saying this because you think this is a place where we are going to connect? Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not interested in you masking on and like being the fun teen coordinator, and then you go home and you like mask off and go back to being, you know, your spouse and parent and whatever. Like, I just want to know who you are. And if we're going to like click and be super tight, that's fantastic. Or if you're just going to be somebody who's like, yeah, they're a great teacher. Will we be friends? Like if we were the same age and outside of the parish and blah, 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 maybe not, but that's not really the point. The point is are you valuable? You know, like I don't have to love absolutely everything about you. I don't have to be convinced like, oh, we're same. Like that doesn't need to happen. It really doesn't. You can just be who you are and be genuine and be authentic. And I think that also in a way kind of goes back to the intimacy thing is it's like, if I've convinced you that I have this value for you and I've convinced you that like, hey, I am who I am and you know, you can kind of take it or leave it. When I do get to be more intimate with you, or when I do kind of share something that's like more private or more personal, you're not going to feel like it's a trick. You're not going to feel like I'm trying to kind of strategically place this thing to get you to like me more or relate to me more, to feel like you owe me something or I owe you something. It's just going to continue to be this genuine relationship where you walk with this person however you're walking with them. Because that's another thing too, is most people are talking about like, you know, who's going to get you there, and it's probably not going to be an intangible saint. It's also probably not going to necessarily be any one person, but it's going to be a community of people. And some people are walking like practically dragging you along, and then there are other people who are from afar who are like, go left, and that's it, you know. Like,
well, like Ben, I mean, keeping with our thing, you know, Francis and Claire, sure, they were fine, but like Francis was like, no, get out of here, we're doing our thing. Like, what are you doing? Like, Claire had to basically be like, dude, I'm gonna do my thing with or without you. We're just gonna steal your model. Like, sorry, man. Same with Benedict and Scholastica. Scholastica annoyed the crap out of Benedict because they were, you know, they were siblings and stuff, and obviously sibling rivalries, but like they helped each other grow. Like, that was their whole thing. So it's like, okay, congratulations. You want to be a saint? All you have to do, you don't have to be relatable to them, but you have to give them something of value. Right? Like, and that's also the other, going back into that whole intimacy thing. Fulton Sheen talks about how the only reason that we pray is not, is the same reason is the same motivation for the only reason that we give gifts, is not to make the other person more valuable, but to make ourselves feel less invaluable, less unworthy. And it's like, okay, so if this whole thing that we're having, this whole conversation about growing in the faith and sharing the faith, it's not that you are unworthy. It's not that you're nothing. You just have to be, and God will allow you to, if you are aligned with him and you are following him, you are being filled by him, God will allow you to be the person that person needs to be. Like, he's going to make it happen. If that's what he needs to happen and you're open to it, he's going to play the instruments. You are the instrument. Congratulations. With your free will, but against your will. Like, sorry, he's going to make it happen for you.
Yeah. What do you say to that piece though, then? Because there can be some element, I think, of going like, oh, I really want to help this person. Like, I really want to walk with this person. I really want to whatever. And so you try all these things, I think, in the like spirit of, just because I don't like instantly click or I don't instantly make it happen the first time, that doesn't mean I give up. I'm going to try, you know, and keep coming at this. But then there comes a point where you sort of realize like, okay, this is not working, you know, like maybe I am not the person, but am I not the person, or am I just awful at this? Like, what would you say to somebody who's trying to discern that element of like, am I, going back to this again, am I a fish trying to climb a tree here, or am I a fish trying to swim upstream rather than downstream? Like, how do I figure this out?
I think that we lose when we start to try to question it. Like, we can't, on one hand, so let's look at the alternatives. On one hand, if we try to push that and be like, you know what, I'm gonna be a little bit more aggressive. Congrats, you have sales breath. Now you come off, they are seeing you more as Catholic than is you. And the only way that someone who is Catholic can evangelize properly is if they see that you are a normal person whose worldview is shaped not for the worse, but you see the world and it's in the way that is the bucket of Catholic. Because then they see normal person with ideas. They don't see Catholic in the same way. You don't want them to see, you know, oh, well, you're just liberal, you're just conservative, you're just woman, you're just man, whatever it might be, right? Nobody wants to just see you as that identity. So if you go that way and try to push it, it's never going to work. All you can do is keep going. And maybe God is having you to plant the seed. Hey, congratulations. You're the Catholic who isn't a jerk to this person. And so now they're open to someone else down the road. All you can do is just live the best you can. And if the Holy Spirit, I mean, I agree with what you guys were talking about language of like, but if the Holy Spirit is actually going to compel you to do something, if you feel called, if God's going to push you, you're going to feel it and you're going to know, you know what, I feel like I should say, because it's going to be natural.
Yeah.
There is no worry about it. So to anybody who's wondering that, like, don't push, don't worry. If God wants you to do more, he will make sure you are doing more. Like, if it's God's plan, it's going to happen. If it isn't, it doesn't matter. It's some other plan.
I think there's an important key too of in being used to praying before doing things and praying while you do them. One of the most common prayers that I say is, well, there's two, and they're sort of the same prayer, but different circumstances, is like, God, if you want me to say something, give me the opportunity, or God, if you want me to speak up, you need to give me the words, because I hit those moments often enough where it's like, I know exactly what this person needs to hear, but they might not want to hear it from me, And so if God wants me, if this person needs to hear this right now, then this person needs to say the magical words that open that door where I go, oh, what's interesting about that actually is, and then I can share the Holy Spirit with them. But
you have the steak, but are they hungry for it?
Right. And then there are times people want to, maybe they'll ask me a question, and my first thought is, how do I respond to this? And so it has to be in that moment where like, okay, in this year I'm listening to you, but then this year I'm like, Lord, what is it? Like, I need this real quick. Give me the words or give me the end. I need it.
And that's why that's why I think we need less apologists in the church. We need more evangelists. Like, congratulations, you know all of the information. How do you deliver it in a way that's like that? To me, as somebody who's been studying like the church since, I was a baby, I was homeschooled. So like I have the Baltimore Catechism memorized. It's a problem. Like, so I'm one master's degree away from being on Catholic Answers, guys. But like, the real question, every heresy has already been done. Every question that someone could ever bring up has already been answered. You can Google it, look it up on Truthfully AI, like whatever you want to do, not sponsored. You can find the answer. How are you going to deliver it in a way that they understand and that they connect with? And that answers the need behind the question they're asking, not just the question themselves. It's not just delivering information, but filling their need. That is the heart of evangelization.
Yes. And I think
that's what's so much fun.
Yes, it's crucial to say the part about the need. The true story, when I was learning how to drive, okay, my dad was telling me, he's like, okay, Des, you're behind the wheel of the car. You need to be paying attention to the car in front of you, obviously. Like, are there brake lights coming on? Obviously, what's happening? But you need to not just be paying attention to the car in front of you, but you need to be looking through their windshields to the car in front of them. Because if that car slams on their brakes, this car is going to slam on their brakes. And that means you're going to need to slam on your brakes, And so he's like, it's not enough to just look at what's happening in front of you. You need to see what's going on through that. And so there'll be people who will pepper you with like, well, why didn't the church respond to this? Well, why didn't the church handle that? Well, why was the church like this? Didn't they hide that? Didn't they? And then at a certain point you go like, what is with all of these questions? Like, what is going on? And then you have to realize, this person has this wound or this fear or this assumption. And that's what they're trying to speak to. They're going, if I'm feeling this, then these things are what are going to get me kind of like hung up. And they're either waiting to kind of like get you, like, yeah, I knew it. I knew it was true. This fear confirmed. Or they're wanting you to say the thing that releases them from whatever this thing that's happening ahead of them is going on. I guess they want to be released from whatever's holding them. But you're like, I can only see the back of your car unless I'm looking through your car to see what's going on in the car ahead of you that's influencing you, And I think that's just true for communication, like, period. With children, kids will have like a freaking meltdown, and you're like, okay, are you just an awful kid, or did you get horrible sleep last night? Are you an awful kid, or are your parents going through a divorce? There are things. And it also I think it makes you more empathetic too, when you realize like this is a whole person and not just like a series of questions coming at me, even if they're coming at me in like a really annoying way.
Yeah. Evangelization is an unholy blend of sales and psychology.
Yeah.
Like, congrats, you have to be a therapist, and you have to go against every desire you ever have to just shake the person and say, I trust me. If you just really trust, it'll solve all of your problems. Like, right. Congratulations. One of the things I teach in my training for small group leaders is that no one cares about the words out of your mouth. They will only ever believe the words out of their own mouth. And so all you can do is ask them questions that get them to say the thing that will answer their question for the thing that they are longing for. And that is
dialogue. Imagine that.
Oh yeah, well, shocker. Holy cow. We've rediscovered sales. Like again,
Right.
it's just sales, but it goes against every fiber of our being because we're like,
Yep.
I have the information, let me share it with you. And that's what I was like for a long time. And then I realized I was an insufferable idiot and I was never going to be able to share the faith. I'd be a great theology teacher though. And I was like, but I don't want to be a theology teacher. I want to make money. And so which working in the church regardless is never going to do that, but still. And so like you have to figure out, okay, you don't need to read another encyclical. You need to pick up How to Win Friends and Influence People. You need to read Influence by Robert Cialdini. Listen to Alex Hormozi, Robert Minor. Like there's a lot. That's the area that a lot more Catholics need to focus into if they want to become evangelists and share the faith. You got to know how to do it, how to word stuff, and you got to know how to think on your feet. Because like you and Marie was talking about earlier, like I can give you a course on evangelization and crash course and, in an hour, whatever it might be. Congratulations. That is going to fall apart the second they ask something else. And so in my training, I never teach them. I say like, hey, here's the preferable, but guess what? Here's now all of the 60 different bullet point tools that you're going to need to keep in the back of your head to say, oh, in answering this, I needed to remember this, this, and this.
Yep.
All you can do is give a tool chest and remember that tool chest and you're good to go. And then you can be a much better evangelist than just, memorizing facts and regurgitating them. Congrats. Yeah. You can be replaced by AI.
Yeah, I think that's the like American school system at work, if you will. Like, sit down in your seat. I'm going to lecture to you. You're going to soak it up like a sponge, and then you're going to regurgitate it, and then everything's good. And it's like, oh, except you're lecturing.
But then we're doing the same thing, and then we're criticizing the schools that are doing that. Like, seriously? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Great, guys. Good job. We're solving the world.
Yeah. This is all that we need, clearly. That's why we have so many very intelligent people who understand like logic and philosophy.
No comment. No comment. We're not going there. We're not going there.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. How do we have those conversations, evangelization style, about the fact that our relationship with God is basically just like God's feeling for us and his words to us and his desires for us? It's a love letter. And our actions and our words and our the lives that we live are the love letter that we write back to him. And I think people can hear that and they go, oh, it's a love letter, it's so sweet, but it's like, no, what does that really mean? Like, how do you get under that and how do you explain it to people and share it with people in an authentic, like, not just a lectury manner, but like, how do you speak to somebody who goes, what the heck does that even mean?
Yeah, I mean, this is why I haven't released my first book yet, because I outlined the entire thing. It was ready to go. It's all about like sharing the faith and like turning evangelization into sales and all that. And then I realized the book was going to be about 900 pages long, because the entire first half is about how can you listen and follow God's will? Because if you're doing that, people will notice there is something different about you, and then that will naturally make conversations happen.
Yep.
And so I went, crap, now I got to write that into a second book. So now I'm writing that book, because the second book has to come out first. And the first book is a whole thing, because you can't evangelize, to your point. Like, you really can't have those conversations just by shoving it in. Like, you can even, I love this.
Don't look at the arm behind the door.
We got the Dr. Pepper flying in. Yes. Okay. Man, now I want Dr. Pepper. So we have, like, we can't force it. We can't have it. Like, all that we can do is live. And by the way that we live, I mean, it's scripture. Like, they will notice who you are by what you do. Like, obvious. And so many people are so averse to talking about works, but like the way you live, the attitude you have, just like I have met 2 people in my entire life who I am 90% sure that both of them are going to be in heaven, period, full stop.
Yeah.
Because when I talk to them, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, like when you talk to them, you're like, oh my gosh, there is something radiating off of you. It is. And one guy, I saw him heal someone's knee right in front of me. And I'm not a super charismatic woo guy, but like, this guy's kneecap was on the side of his knee and he prayed over it and the guy was walking fine. And I was like, what? He was in a cast and he was, I was like, Jesus is what God's with you. And the other was Cardinal. Oh my gosh, who's the Cardinal that everyone loved? Burke.
Oh.
And that man walked into a room and I was like, oh, that's a living saint. Oh my. And we can have our pros and cons about, different
Yeah.
cardinals and stuff, but it's like, and not true. 3. I met JP2 at his last celebrated Easter Mass. That's my cool Catholic fact, right? I met my
Yay.
confirmation saint. But again, he's just driving by. You're in a week before he dies in the Pope Mobile, and you're like, something is radiating off of him.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's the same energy as like when my wife's like, I barely got any sleep last night because you were just radiating heat under the covers. It feels like that. Like it's crazy.
Palpable.
Because you just, it is. And even if you don't have to be, that holy, but like, I mean, strive to, obviously, James is great. But even if you're a little bit, that will radiate off and it will attract someone to it, and they will say, why are you the way you are? Some people say it is a Francis of Assisi quote. Some people don't.
I was just gonna say that the non-quote.
Preach the gospel at all times, if necessary, use words. But guess what? You're gonna have to use words eventually.
Yes.
But the true preaching of the gospel is how you live. And then if you want to have those conversations, good for you. You will never be able to have them in a good way unless they are actually asking. Because if you start and you say, hey, you ever wondered why Catholics pray the rosary? You're going to be like, no, get away from me, weirdo. Like, sorry, they'll remember you, not in a good way.
Right.
So we have to be the kind of person that they are curious about. And then we can have the conversation because they will bring that up. And then we have to be casual about it.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. With Marie, I talked about what can I do about me? How that's just like such a big mantra. So many problems can either be solved by just asking that question, or you can at least recognize, like, I don't actually need to be that upset about this because I have no control over it. Again, there's so many trite sayings. Like, they're sayings because in a sense that they're true and they speak to something. You're like, let go and let God. Like, yeah, I can't influence that.
I hate it, but it's true.
This is what I can do. But also what you just said, which is, why are you the way that you are? That, like, minor life drop here, that was like a revelation in therapy for me. I had a very, very difficult relationship with 2 different people who were very close to me, and I was like, I don't understand why things are so stressed, intense right now. Like, why is there such a rift going on? And they were 2 completely unrelated people, and there were 2 completely different things happening, but they were both just happening to go on at the exact same time. And my therapist was basically like, well, why do you think this person's the way that they are? Why do you think that person's the way that they are? And it made me think, and I was like, well, I know that this person had a rough childhood, and I know that that person experienced that when they were really young. And I also know that this person's dad was never really in their life. And then it was just like, click, 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 click. And I was like, got it. People stink. It's very, very rarely do people just like suck in a vacuum, no pun intended. There's usually some cause that triggered that. And so when you get to that point of, why are you the way that you are? Why are you asking me all of these questions looking through?
But then we can't imply. That's the worst part is, like, congrats. We know, like, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine a few months ago where they were talking about, well, I just hate that the church has a role in government. And I'm like, I think your problem is more so that you don't like when other people tell you what to do based off of their morality, because you have a problem if it even wasn't the church. And like, no, I just don't think that. And I'm like, you can't tell them because they don't take care about the words out of your mouth. They have to go through the discovery themselves of becoming who they got to be.
Yes.
And that's the hardest part, because you're just like, dude, you would have so much more of a fulfilled life if you just saw this one thing. I swear, and that's why I could be a great therapist, but it would stress me out because I'd be like, buddy, trust me, you just got to get over this and you'd be great at it. And it's like, no, someone has to go through their own process. But you're right. Like, it is all about like this individual identity. Like, no one hates this. Another thing, the first thing that I talk about in my training, when we start talking about like, hey, when things go off the rails, what do you, in a small group, what do you do? It's like, when someone brings up an argument or they start to fight, people only fight about things that matter to them. So you have to ask, why does this matter to me? And I tell this story about this girl. She was probably like 14. Her name was Emily, at National Catholic Youth Conference 2 years ago. And so 2023. And we had this giant big board that said like, what do you want from youth ministry? And teens could like write down their sticky note and slap it on the wall. It was really cool. It was awesome. She wrote down pro-choice and then showed it to me. She was like, this is what I put. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. One of our things that we teach in the training is there's no wrong answers, only wrong conclusions. Like, an answer is just a belief that you have in this moment. And so I was like, so why do you believe that? And turns out after like 30 seconds, I found out she had no idea even what it meant to be pro-life or pro-choice. Her problem was that a youth minister, like small group leader, had told her, hey, you have to come with us to go pray outside of an abortion clinic because that's what good Catholics do. And so she was willing to come at me because her problem wasn't pro-life versus pro-choice. Her problem is someone else told me what to do.
Yeah.
And the second that I told her, oh, she was wrong, she shouldn't have said that, she was like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, no, she was in the wrong. Because I don't do that. And am I a decent Catholic? She's like,
Right.
I mean, you're here. I'm like, facts, exactly. So guess what? If you don't feel like that, you don't have to. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah. Do you want to understand why the church says what it does about abortion? She was like, I'd love to. And after like 10 minutes, she's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. No, I'm pro-life then. Like, oh my God, there we go.
Right. Yeah.
It's not easy.
I think, have you ever, okay, you said I could be a good therapist. I had 2 separate therapists say that to me. So it's interesting that you say that, because now I wonder if people who are like very attuned to the skills that a therapist needs, if that makes them super evangelists. Because I also kind of feel like I'm in the same boat as you, as people will sometimes talk to me like, are you going to be an apologist? Like, are you going to try and do this? And it's like, look, I love apologetics, but I sort of feel like the drive that I have is just not that. Like, that's a very much an incidental part of it. And maybe it's something that I'll do like full flesh. I'm a 3-dimensional thing, not just a flat only here. But like my main everything is evangelizing, the new evangelization, like all of that stuff. I am like so much about it. And I wonder, like, I just genuinely have not had that thought before. I thought that was just like a me thing, but obviously you're extremely effective.
Have you heard this idea that evangelization is one of the untalked about gifts of the Holy Spirit?
No.
It is. It is a gift.
About it, because I haven't spoken to you about it.
So, okay. So I wasn't sure like if you heard that before, because I've heard that like kind of like the concept floated but never formalized. So I'm saying it here. It's my idea. Evangelization, just like every calling we're called to, every gift we're given, evangelization is a gift of the Holy Spirit. Like it is a calling from God. There was somebody who DM'd me a few months ago, back when I was like a much smaller little baby Instagram account. And they were like, hey, I want to start like talking about the faith online like you do. And I'm like, pray.
Yeah.
Trust me, this sucks. I have to do it because it's that Chesterton quote, like somebody who wants to change the world has to love the world so much they want to change it, but hate it so much because the way it is to have enough drive to do it in the first place. Like, it sucks. Congratulations. I'm putting out 2 videos a day. The amount of time alone it takes, the amount of stress it takes. Are you kidding me? Like, oh my gosh. And it is a calling and it is a gift. Like the Holy Spirit will, if you are called to I believe that everyone is called to be a saint, and part of sainthood is evangelization. But I think to be proper, just like to be a proper apologist, that is a calling. I think if you want to be an evangelist, that is a calling, and it takes a certain kind of people, and it takes a certain kind of, God's going to equip you for doing that. It is very, very difficult. You can teach, like I can teach anyone how to share the faith. It's not, let me rephrase that. It is hard. The steps are not complicated. Yeah. Right? You just got to remember them. You got to do practice and you're fine, right? Just like anything. Anything can be taught. But to actually be attuned to do it where it's natural, it's the same as like, I literally cannot get a basketball in a hoop. I genuinely can't. Put a gun to my head. Like, sorry, pull the trigger. Like, it's over. I cannot do it. Yeah. But you ask me to talk to someone and help them overcome something, I'll do it in a heartbeat. I can do that. So evangelization is it's a natural call that God is going to equip people to.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So I guess that goes, again, this gets so self-referential and meta, it's kind of ridiculous, but like that.
I'll be the meta talk today. Everybody else can be, high level stuff.
The fish's ability to climb a tree, like I think maybe that's some of it, is like there are going to be some, or like, Murray and I were saying, like some people are the Trent Horns, some people are the St. Therese of Lisieux, like whatever. Some people are going to be the I'm online with an account doing apologetics or evangelism or whatever. And then there's going to be some people who are like, I'm just in the comments. Or there are some people who are like, I'm just watching with like my popcorn because I'm a nosy Nelly. But guess what? I'm in touch with what's happening. And then when I'm in real life with somebody, that's the thing that I'm called to. And so I'm going to slide over to that person and be like, hey, partner, I know that you saw that same video that I saw. Let's talk about it, because I saw it too. And wasn't that crazy? And there's your end. And now you're going.
And that's why I don't even think you can't even say, I'm going to do it. All you can do is say, hey, God, I'm listening to you. You point me in the right direction. Anything else is going to be too stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool when
Yeah.
once you put all the different pieces of like what sainthood is together and like the role it has in sharing the faith. It's like, hey, stress isn't on you. Stay close to God. He'll put you in the right place. You're good to go.
Mhm.
Just make sure that you are not getting proud. It's true humility, right? In
Yeah.
being defined as understanding your place in the world. As long as you recognize that and you understand that you are not greater than you are and you are not lesser than you are, God's going to put you, and you're talking to God constantly and you're receiving the sacraments, you have the grace. God is going to put you where he wants to put you and give you strength to do what he wants you to do. Sorry, it's that easy.
Yeah.
Stop getting in your own way and adding things to it. Not you, just like people in general.
Yeah. Are you super read on the encyclicals? Like some of the older ones?
Some of them.
Okay. Have you read either Vigilante Cura or
Yes.
Miranda Proris?
Yes.
Okay, so for those who don't know, both of those encyclicals talk about the basically like the entertainment industry. Vigilante Cura focuses mostly on the major motion picture industry, and then Miranda Proris, which came later, like I think 20 years later, talks about movies and radio and just kind of like entertainment in general. But what both of them say, and I think this carries forward very much to today, both of them say that you have a big responsibility if you're putting out movies and entertainment like that, because they're such easy leisure activities to watch a movie or listen to a show or what have you, that those people who make these things have a grave responsibility to ensure that what they're making is actually moral and good and edifying. And it doesn't have to be all the things all the time, but it shouldn't be glorifying sin, and it shouldn't be causing scandal, and it shouldn't be just essentially like turning culture for the worse, basically. And I think that is interesting to see this said, because obviously true things are obviously true, right? But it's interesting to see it said pre-Vatican II, and back in, again, this is Vigilante Cura was 1930, so almost 100 years ago now. The effect that the major motion picture industry had in 1930 is probably akin to the effect that the internet has today. And so
100%.
that wisdom absolutely applies, where it's like, if you're going to make a video, then you need to be absolutely certain that what you're going to make is edifying, is good, is all those things. But I would even say, if you're going to go online and like engage online, because even if you're like, well, I don't make videos, I just comment. It's like, okay, well, are you a troll? Because if you're a troll, you're also doing untold amounts of harm. Like, it always boggled my mind, the people who would get on like 4chan and think it was absolutely hilarious to just like spin people up. And it's like, dude, okay, I'll be honest. In a sense, I get it.
I was going to say, we've all been there. Children of the 90s, like, come on.
Imagine wanting to do it and trying to do it. You know, like, it's like taking, like, messing with your sibling to a completely inappropriate level. You know, like, I see my kids do it. That's why I get it. You know, it's just like, you're an idiot. Stop. You're an idiot. Stop. Like, that's the reaction I wanted. You know, I just wanted to make you so mad. But it's like, there's no love there. So what you're doing is actually harmful, and you have no idea what the effect is going to be. And I think that's true too. And maybe with our like 14 minutes left, this might be an interesting like turn to take.
Go for
What
it.
do you make of the like public corrections that can happen online? Because some people will say that today people are extremely like uncomfortable and upset with how some people will just be so wrong and no one will say anything about it. And so then they jumped to the public correction, neglecting the biblical like approach in private and then approach with friends and then take it to the church kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think in a sense, when you put it online, you have to be comfortable with the response online, but I still think that wisdom applies. And I also see some of the ripple effects of this. Like, I'm going to try and correct you. And it's like, okay, well, you doing that caused this to happen, caused this to happen, caused this to happen. What are the fruits here? They're all rotten, you know? And then there are other ways of doing it where you did it and it touched somebody's heart and it worked. And I don't know. I don't want to speak too much to it to like give too much of my own thoughts away. But what do you think of it? What do you make of it?
No, I one of the things that like, because I don't know if you know this, but like back when Catholic like influencers started to be a thing on YouTube. Like I was like an A-tier Catholic YouTuber. Like I was up there. I have my stuff. I was on EWTN for some stuff. I was legit. And then I took a pause for a while because I just didn't like who I was becoming with it. And then when I came back and I was like, God was like, you gotta start doing this again. I was like, fine. One of the things I said was, I'm never going to attack a person, but ideas are free game.
Yeah.
So I think I pride myself that like on my Instagram account, all of the conversations are the amount of times that I've had someone say, I don't follow a lot of Catholics because they're kind of like self-righteous elitists, but you're just like talking about stuff. And even when you like disagree, you're just like, cool, man, like this is what we do. Like, that's cool. It's like, that is how it should be done. Like, even if Pope Francis says something that we disagree with, I disagree with some of his takes. I think that they are like on immigration in the US. I think they're more coded towards somebody who's from where he's from. I respect it. I think some of his stuff leans a little too far on one side than the other. That's fine. He's allowed to have his opinion. However, I can say I disagree with his idea while still respecting the role he has. And that's fine. And I see a lot of Catholics not doing that. And it drives me up the walls. And I just want to shake them and be like, why don't you understand this? Yeah. Ideas are fun. Like, I think Augustine talks about this in City of God, actually, where he says that even the pagans have great morals. Some of them have virtue that we can emulate. And then I think that's where he talks about like, and in the arena, they are striving for their best. They are striving for physical greatness, even though they worship a God and worship themselves, a God that is not real. But I think it's the same way. Like, a Protestant can have a great point, but if we want to correct their incorrectness, let's not correct them because we want to hate on them. Let's just disagree with their idea. Like, oh my gosh, what was the one pastor, like every Catholic influencer was like making a reaction to it, where you made one where he was talking about how he can't respect priests because they're not building anything. And it's like, dude, that's a really stupid take. With all due respect, not this one, coach, not this one. And he's like, it's like, really, man? Like, Jesus, sorry. Like, you made a great response. Franco made a great response. Greg made a great response. Like, it was so funny. But it's like, you can either Driscoll. Thank you. Yeah. We could attack him and be like, look at this silly heretic, blah, blah, blah. That's not going to do anything. But if we can say, actually, the beauty of the priesthood, like you did very well, and a lot of us did really well, it is that you are giving up everything to just serve people. So it's like, if we want to correct people, don't correct them because no one likes being corrected. But you can say, actually, there is a better way. I call this better way theology almost, or better way evangelization, where we don't say you're wrong, I'm right. We're saying, actually, that's a really good point, but I think there's a better way to execute this. Because nobody disagrees with a better version of their plan. They disagree with a wrong plan, or saying their plan is wrong, or a different plan. So I think that we can correct, but we're so often worried about, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm God's on my team. You're a heretic because I say stuff, and even inter-church stuff. It's like, congrats, the church isn't going to be saved because we're praying in Latin or praying in tongues. Like, sorry, like that's just not what's going to happen. But you're pushing away a lot of people out of the church because you're just saying, I'm going to correct you on something that doesn't even matter. And so, I think that even beyond the take it to, them personally and then to bring other people around to church, it's fine talking about it directly online if it's in the public square, so long as you're not attacking the individual, because then you are attacking someone who is made in the image and likeness of God, who is in a different point in their journey. You don't know where they are, but you can say, hey, I understand where you're coming from. It logically makes sense. However, what about this? There's a better way to do this. And then congratulations, you're evangelizing.
Exactly. I saw right here, I'm going to show this comment. Unapologetically Catholic. I'm always really nervous to put out something that's incorrect. I try to only speak to areas I'm confident in. It's a terrifying responsibility. And then he followed that up by saying, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the faith, and the last thing I want to do is add to that. I think both of those comments are an excellent point about having the humility and the appropriate amount of zeal. I get to points sometimes where someone says something and I'll be like, I know you're wrong, but I'm not really sure how to articulate it. And what I want to do is I want to like quickly respond to this person, but I know that whatever hasty response I make is not going to be as quality as taking a minute and, do I even respond to this, first of all? And second of all, okay, if so, how? And putting it in there. But I think there's some element of like a you got to be first that happens on the internet, that can fuel this idea that like I want to respond right away. But I think that there's humility, but more importantly, wisdom in knowing that, oh, I can respond to this and I can say whatever, or being able to go, that's not my ministry. And so I'm going to like pass that off to somebody else. Some other person in the comments can see this and respond to it or whatever.
Yep.
Or at the very least, it can sit on ice while I try and like figure out the parts of my answer that are missing.
Francis didn't make schools.
Right.
But he built churches and he helped, refocus the church and clerical. Like there's so many areas of the church or things that are happening that even I look at. And humility is in pride and aside. Like I know all the answers of the churches, all these different things, right? Like there's so many things that I'm not going to talk about because it's not where God's calling me to talk. And it might be someone asks you a question and you're like, honestly, man, I don't even know. But that's why you need to make sure that when you are living out your faith, you are doing it with intentionality. Because if they say, why do you do that? And you say, I don't know, I'm kind of going through the motions. It makes you look like a fool. Yeah. So if you're like, well, one of the things I recommend to people, if they're like, how do I start growing in the faith more? Start learning why you do what you do. That's it. You already do a lot. Now learn why. If you can go through the entire mass knowing what you are doing and doing intentional, it will be the most powerful hour of your life. So yeah, that's kind of the answer and the response is you figure out why you do what you do so that when people ask you, you know. And other areas, you don't need to. It's okay. There's going to be some other Catholic who's going to come around and answer.
Exactly. I think the last one about like there's a lot of misunderstanding, and the last thing I want to do is add to that. That to me is like the number one reason why I don't respond to something, or I don't well, I'll take it off of me a little bit and I'll say like I will cringe at some of the things that people put out there because I'm like, dude, that was too fast. And you clearly like there are so many holes in this that like the comments are gonna freaking light you on fire and then eat your burnt corpse. Like not to get nasty, but like
I have deleted entire videos that were done and ready to go and re-recorded them because I'm like, crap.
Yeah.
I changed one word and now I'm ruined.
Yep. Yeah. And I think there's there's something to be said about going kind of back a little bit to like the Vigilante Cura Miranda Prorsis stuff. I think people undervalue the importance of putting out, whether it's a comment or a video or whatever, something that's quality. And I'm not speaking like to perfectionism or like a curated feed or whatever, but I more mean just something that's good. You know, if I stutter in it, who cares? Is the overall message accurate and correct? And is it going to touch who it needs to touch the way that it's supposed to? Or is this just me like grandstanding? Or is this just me going like, well, you know, not my Pope or whatever? You know what I mean? Like,
does it provide value? It's back to that.
Yeah, exactly. And when you don't provide value, or when you provide subpar value, you damage the faith or you cheapen it, I think.
Yep.
Too. And it's crap, and people don't want a crap sandwich, you know?
Yeah.
Don't feed me Five Guys, okay?
Exactly. Well, and I think it's natural to feel like I don't want to, make the faith worse. That's fine. Then don't say, if you do not feel like you are equipped, and God will make sure you are equipped, then maybe take a second.
Yeah.
That's fine. Nothing wrong. It's not saying I'm not having faith in God. No, it is perfectly normal.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, man. Was there anything, I don't know, any final thoughts? Any like last, I have like 3 minutes left, so I don't want to like that.
There's so much more to go.
You know what I mean? So
no, I mean,
what do you think people need? What's the number one thing you think people need to take from the conversation of online evangelization? You know, Marie and I kind of like recapped where there were like a handful of phrases that everything sort of circled around. What do you think?
It's you first. I mean, you and Marie kind of said that too. Like, you cannot serve other people unless you are full yourself. I hate when every time I talk about, oh man, it kind of sucks being like 27 and married with no kids in the church because the church has nothing for you right now and the church doesn't know what to do with you. Everyone's like, maybe you should start something yourself. And I'm like, that would be great. I'm way too busy. Can I please just be served? Like, is that a bad thing to feel that way? You need to be full before you can serve. You cannot give grace if you do not have grace yourself. If you are not in a state of grace, you cannot do anything. It's just period.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. If you want to evangelize, you need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
After that, God is going to point you in the direct. If you are doing that and genuinely following and genuinely listening to God, he will point you in the direction he wants you to go. And when that happens, do not try to anticipate his moves. Don't get sales breath. Don't be like, but I have the answers. I really want to share them. That is the worst thing you can do, because that ruins someone's connection with you, and you are never going to be the person. It's like the guy who's like constantly like sitting next to the girl in the cafeteria. It's like, she's not going to date you. She's going to go with somebody else because they're not desperate for you, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the same energy you're giving off. So, and I know a lot of guys who have done that. So it's like, guys, that was the reason. Sorry to break that to you on a Friday afternoon. But just do that. Listen to God. Be in the right state of grace. He will put you in the path he wants you to go. Just keep walking. That's it. He will set you in the right path. And then remember that you are giving the faith. It is not the biggest deal in the world. I share this in some conversations we've had. Like, the moment that you have with somebody is not going to be what saves or breaks their eternal soul. If God wants their soul, he will put a million paths in their place for them to be able to choose him. So don't put all the scare on you of, I have to say this perfectly or I'm screwed. I'm going to ruin their life. It's okay. Yeah. Don't worry about it. It's fine. God will make sure that you're going to say the thing they need to hear.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, Connor, thank you for coming on. We're going to have to continue this conversation because I have like a bajillion thoughts and notes, but an hour was not long enough for us.
Yes. Let's do another one.
Absolutely.
I'm down.
All right.
I'm going to hop into the YouTube comments and listen to the next few people.
Bye.
God bless. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. Coming up is Kyle Wellington.
Hi there. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Let me get centered here. There we go. I don't know what we're doing. What's up?
We are talking about online evangelization. Pros, cons. Can you do it? Can you not? One thing that I was thinking with Connor, right at the end there was, how do you deal with that breakdown of like, this one interaction is going to like, ruin everything and it's all my fault and da 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 da. How do you deal with disappointment when you want so desperately, or maybe you work so hard or for so long or whatever, trying to get somebody to see what you see or to convert or to whatever, and then when it doesn't work, how do you deal with it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess the way I deal with this nowadays is mostly low expectations. Whenever you're dealing with a stranger online, your expectations should be very tempered, quite frankly, because you're not going to. You got to keep in mind, Jesus didn't have a 100% conversion rate, and you're going to have a lower conversion rate than him.
Yeah.
So, just keep that in mind whenever you're interacting with, especially strangers online. I don't know if I know anybody who's ever been convinced by an argument in YouTube or Facebook comment sections. The only time that I've really had success is whenever I've really gotten to know the person. I became their friend. I, walked with them. I'll use the dirty word. I accompanied them, and just Kyle, back up a smidgen. Okay. All right. How about this? All right. So, yeah. So that's really the only time. So as far as disappointment goes, Kevin, I don't know if you mind me calling you out in the chat, and because I have control over this, I'll throw his comment up here. Whenever I first started my YouTube channel out, Kevin seemed like a really nice guy, and he is a nice guy. And I thought after one conversation with him, I would get him back to being, call him back from apostasy and back into the fold of the Catholic Church. And he really didn't. He's still the friendliest apostate you'll ever meet. And I don't know. It's just like, because I actually do have, please understand what I'm saying here. Like, I still love Kevin. I hope that I haven't had my last beer with him yet and whatnot. So it's just, you still have to. Oh, there's reverb. Okay. How about, is this better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll here. Let's try this. Okay. Hopefully that is better. So
I just learned what reverb was. I hear it all the time, but I didn't know that was the word for it.
okay, yeah, sorry. ASMR Kyle throat noises coming at you. There's a blooper out there. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, he's like, how do you deal with that? It's like, well, I still love Kevin. I think
Yeah.
Kevin's a great guy. Our friendship is not over, and it's man, everybody's talking at me at once right now. So it's okay, all right, cool. My wife just texted me. Is like, hey, did you leave the keys behind? Yes, I did. And she just texted me back, yep, found them. All right. So how do you deal with the disappointment? It's like, well, I guess the way that you deal with the disappointment is that you acknowledge that despair is a sin against hope, and that you don't lose hope.
Mhm.
Even okay, well, let's get a little serious here. So I'm normally a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but this is a pretty serious topic. The only other time I've talked about this publicly is on my interview on Keith Nestor's channel, but my brother died a little over 10 years ago, almost to the day. And he died unbaptized. Clearly, that's going to be one of the biggest disappointments that I carry with me for the rest of my life. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Well, the way you deal with it is that you don't give up hope. Years later, this was, I think, in 2022, like around fall of 2022, whenever my mom was telling me, though, a story where it seems like a miracle could have been attributed to my brother, where he came to one of his old friends in a dream saying, hey, one of our other friends is overdosing right now, and you have to intervene or else she's going to die. It was such a real dream. He woke up, he called 911, and sure enough, he saved their other friend's life. So, and I mean, when my mom told me that story, I broke down into tears, because it was just like, I mean, that was a sign of life. It's just, oh, my brother's alive. So I guess that's how you deal with the disappointment, is that you just don't give up on hope.
I'm going to write that down real quick. But I think I want to say too that there's a difference in feeling like everything depends on you and feeling like you tried your best and it didn't work, and then it hurts you. My experience, I walked with a friend, I'm just going to say it her because she's a woman and I don't want to try and keep it hidden and slip up later. We'll acknowledge that she's a woman, but I walked with her for so long. It was like, I want to say a year of meeting up and getting coffee and talking about everything. Like this was evangelization before I even had a grip of what evangelization was. This is the very beginnings of time where I had that moment of like, I was an uncatechized Catholic and there are other people who are like me and I can do something. I was walking with her, living our lives, had so much overlap, and she was raised in an unfortunate situation, to sum it up. And her home was very hostile toward Catholics and Catholicism. And she had been taught a lot of the lies about Catholics. And so then when she came to know my husband and I, she was like, this is nothing like what I thought, or what, not even what she thought. She thought that it probably wasn't quite so bad, but she had heard otherwise. And, the people who told her are her parents. So like, how do you navigate that when you're a young adult and, you're supposed to believe your parents? They're supposed to be people who teach you good things, but then my parents maybe aren't the best people, or maybe they were wrong or mistaken at the very least, And so we had all of these talks, and she was really, really seeing the sense and like seeing the light and coming to, I guess, waking up, But as happens when you are considering converting, there was a lot of spiritual warfare going on for her. And unfortunately, somebody who she trusts and is very well-meaning kind of gave her the out of like, it doesn't really matter what denomination you are. What matters is that you have a relationship with God, and that you love God. And so she immediately like took her foot off the gas and was like, okay, I can just coast. I'm all right. the spiritual warfare died down, and she said she felt peace. But for me at the time, I was like, this isn't peace. This is, you're finally being left alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was so disappointing because I was like, I really thought this was going to happen. I thought it was going to happen soon. I thought I was going to be like totally with you in this. And it wasn't me as much as it was like, I know what this does for your life, and I know how it helps you, and I know how fulfilling it is, and I see how on fire you are for Jesus 110%. And I know that this is just that last puzzle piece, and you were so close to clicking it in, and then you got scared and you pushed it off to the side again. And to this day, we've talked like a couple of times, and I've had like total convictions where there was one day in particular where like I heard the Holy Spirit loud and clear. They were like, you need to call her and you need to tell her that she needs to become Catholic. And I was like, okay. And she's that type of person that's exactly what I did. It was I called her up and I was like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? How are the babies? Blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, by the way, the Holy Spirit told me you need to become Catholic. And she was like, I know. That was her response, was I know. And it still hasn't happened. And there's this element that's just like, you know? And it's like, I want it so bad. It has 110% nothing to do with me and 110% everything to do with her, and knowing, like, especially when I hear about, you know, like this is going on and that is going on and whatever. And I'm like, I so wish you had this additional context, because everything would be different. It really, truly would. Like, and so I think there's a difference in feeling that, but on the evangelist's side, as opposed to, you know, how do we evangelize? Like, how do we be good evangelists? Like, I think learning to deal with and accept the disappointment that comes with when it doesn't work. And it's not even like it doesn't work because, well, you're just a troll and you weren't even an honest inquiry or whatever, you know, like it just doesn't work because there's just, it's got to be them. They've got to put their foot on the pedal again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can do everything you can to be like, come on, I'm kicking your ankle. Like, you can do this. If there's like, you know, it's like the disappointment, like sitting in that and like, I don't know, wrestling with that. There's some to that I want to like tease out. I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, so as you're saying this, I just want to remind everybody the words of St. Augustine, and that's, you know, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. And the story's not over yet. So yeah, sometimes a conversion story is really simple and, dare I say, stupid. Like, you know, a cute girl and free pizza. Next thing you know, this teenage boy just runs into the arms of the church, never leaves. Sometimes that happens. I know firsthand that happens. Sometimes it's a decades-long struggle. I think actually, I don't want to tell too much of his story, but I think a mutual friend of ours, Sam Nunnally, like his story is like 3 decades long.
My gosh!
And he only just came into the church last year. So that would be my encouragement is to say, like, hey, the story's not over. Don't give up hope. That's how we deal with that.
Mm-hmm. And I think that going kind of a little full circle here is like, even when we think it's over, because, and in a sense it is over, like when your life is done. But what that really means is, you know, there is life on the other side. We just don't get to see it play out anymore. It's over for us. It's not over for them. And that's why our prayers continue to be efficacious afterwards.
Yeah. And not only are our prayers efficacious, they are essential. You're not going to convert anybody without praying for them. So, you know, you can have all the best apologetic arguments. You can have, you know, you get a PhD in theology and apologetics and whatnot, but you're never going to win a battle of wits with the devil. Yeah. So the only way that you're going to beat Satan is through prayer and fasting. So if you're trying to convert somebody, you need to be praying for them. You need to be fasting if you want to pull out the big guns, and you absolutely have to love them.
100%. This is a bit of a pivot here, but this is something Marie and I are talking about, and I think you would have something good to say about it. My take on online evangelization is that it's a piece that is very useful for a certain type of people, a certain type of person. You know, maybe it's the person who never leaves their house and is never going to have that in-person contact to be evangelized in person to like get the ball rolling. Or maybe it's the person who's like, I'm really curious, but I have hard questions. I don't want to feel like somebody's selling me something. I don't want somebody to invite me to church. Like, I just kind of want to find the answers to my questions. And so making the stuff for the internet reaches those people quite well. It also reaches a whole slew of other people that might otherwise be evangelized in person. But I think online evangelization works best, and this is sort of like the crux of my thesis here, is it works best when it mirrors in-person evangelization as much as possible. So I mentioned that, like, I have a handful of people who are, in my inbox all the time. Like, I would know them if I saw them in real life, whereas so many other people who follow me, you might be liking all of my posts, but we don't have this this personal dialogue going. You know what I mean? And so I wouldn't recognize you the same way that I would recognize somebody else who is constantly talking to me. And the people who I am, obviously this is going to be such an obvious statement, but like, the people that I am most in touch with are the people that I am most in contact with. And that contact is such an important piece of evangelizing. And that's why walking with people in person is so important, because getting to be there with them as individuals and see them as persons and not just likes or comments or whatever is very powerful. Getting a response when you say, like, hey, this is how I feel and this is what I think. And you go, oh, okay, well, I totally affirm that, or I totally hear that, or that's really hard, or, maybe consider this other way, or whatever. Like, just getting that you're not talking to a wall, like, there is a real person on the other side. And I think online evangelization is the most effective when it's like that, which is honestly why smaller accounts are so special, because you can be so intentional with everybody who reaches out to you. But it's the sliding scale of, like, when your account blows up, you have much greater reach, but you can't be as intentional and as, like, personal with people, I guess. And so I'm trying to work out that element of, like, who am I talking to? I know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to Catholics who have been, like, brought up in the church, the Catholic 101, the Adam and Eve, whatever. But that's basically it's stagnated at that point for you, So I'm trying to go, okay, you've hit your 101, you're great. Now let's go to the 200 levels of stuff. Let's go to the 300 level of stuff. Like, I always use the university example. But it was different doing that when I had 600 followers versus when I had 6,000 followers versus when I had 60,000 followers. Like, it's a completely different ballgame, because at first it was this one person asking this one question. And so I made the video on it, and it still works that way sometimes. But other times it's just, this is the chatter, and somebody needs to say something to kind of cut through the chatter of what is happening right now. But cutting through the chatter addresses a whole bunch of people in a vague way, as opposed to you asked me this question and I gave you this response. That's a personal thing. So what do you make of online evangelization and how it's done best? I think we probably would. If we agree that it's best in person, how can we channel our evangelization to kind of, like, feed into you need to make personal contact. You need to touch somebody in real life.
I think you touch on a really important point, in that evangelization is the most effective whenever it's relational. So, I work with an apostolate called Cross the Tiber. So if you want to check out crossthetiber.org, if you're considering Catholicism, or if you know somebody who's considering Catholicism, crossthetiber.org. Basically, it's a Discord server where people can come in and they can get that more personal touch. Matt Frad, Trent Horn, Joe Heschmeyer, all these guys are brilliant. You're probably not going to get a one-on-one conversation with them. Not because they don't want to, but just simply because if they gave their intentional, personal, relational time to you, they would never sleep and their family would never see them. So this is where it's just like, I don't know. It's a tricky balance to strike, because at a certain point you reach a level of celebrity that doesn't work well for evangelization, but at the same time that level of celebrity expands your reach and helps you reach other people. So I don't know. I think it really works in, like, a layered way. And this is why this is kind of like the brilliance of Catholicism, is because ultimately it's the Holy Spirit that's the conductor to this. I don't even want to call it an orchestra, but it's more like a conductor to the train wreck, really. And at the end of this train wreck, we have, you know, the most beautiful works of art that you've ever seen, which is going to be the human soul and souls in heaven. So, but, you know, it might be, well, you know, I used to be Trent Horn's assistant, and I would read a lot of his comments, and I can't tell you how many comments that I saw about, oh, you know, I first got interested in Catholicism because of watching Pints with Aquinas, and, you know, I came to the Council of Trent to learn more about Catholicism, and now I'm ready to take the next step. And these people aren't exactly like coordinating these things on their own, but it's the Holy Spirit that's moving through here. So it might be that your online evangelization is that first taste or the gateway drug or whatever. Yeah. And if you ever thought that you were going to get monetized, that ends tonight. So that's, I guess that's kind of what it is. And it's an invitation to something deeper, because while we should absolutely be evangelizing the digital continent, this isn't where the faith is supposed to be lived out. You cannot be Catholic on Twitter and then just walk away. Like, no, it has to become real. It has to become incarnational. You have to go to your parish. You can't just watch the live streams. You know, Jesus didn't come to us in a Zoom meeting. He lived and he ate and he, you know, died among us. So, you know, eventually the faith has to become something like that too. So, you know, when we're evangelizing, yes, we cut through the chatter. You know, we do the perhaps maybe a little bit more algorithmy things, or dare I say even clickbait, although there's a point where that crosses into dishonesty.
Yeah.
Just to get somebody's attention and say, hey, let me tell you the good news. And then there comes a point where you just got to kind of let go and let God and pray for, you know, if you've got a wide audience, you pray for everybody who watches your videos. I think one of my favorite posts that I see on Twitter is like, hey, if you're reading this, I prayed for you today, which is awesome. But you got to trust that the Holy Spirit's going to direct those people to that next step. And while you are a smaller account or channel or what have you, you do have the ability to give that more relational approach. And it seems, at least from where I'm standing, because I kind of know everybody in this space, it seems that there's always somebody else coming up. So it's almost like you start off as an evangelist, and then you become, and as you grow, you become more of an evangelist to the evangelists. So you can, if you're expanding your network, you can say, hey, you've got some great questions here. Let me direct you to my friend Kyle. He can help you from here. But right now I've got a baby to feed and 5 other kids that need my attention, or what have you. So, as long as the online evangelization is pointing toward something deeper, something a little bit more, dare I say, real, that's kind of the job. That's what we're doing. And, you know, from the inside looking in, I would say that we're doing a decent job at that, but there's still a lot of room for improvement.
That makes me think, if bigger accounts can kind of point and feed to smaller accounts, this is like blowing my mind right now. So I mean, I'm not even going to take the note because I'm just going to talk it out. So bigger accounts can point to smaller accounts, can point to in-person stuff. So in my mind, there's an element of evangelization that is, it's incredibly important to have the teamwork aspect, right? Because if somebody is in my inbox saying like, oh, you know, like I want to convert, but I don't really know, like, if I could, you know, like I was raised as this flavor of Protestant, and, you know, I have all of these thoughts and questions, and, you know, like I'm a father, and I have a bunch of kids, and I have a spouse. Like, I don't know if they're going to want to come along, and like, how do I walk this? How do I do this? How do whatever? And I might think, you know what, who do I know who's a Protestant convert with a bunch of kids and a wife? Kyle, you know,
right.
That's going to work best if I know that, you know, and it works best, because you're also online. Like I probably know plenty of other men who are in the similar boat. but they're not online. And so the best thing I could do is go, okay, well, let me see if my friend's okay with like me exchanging numbers. And then I'm going to be like, hey, this might seem shady, but like,
Yeah.
so it's better to say, maybe go talk to Kyle because he's my friend and he knows about this and what have you. And then maybe in your talking, they've mentioned, oh, yeah. And like, I'm in like the Dallas Fort Worth area. And you might go, oh my gosh, I know a parishioner in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And so you go, hey, this might seem a little shady, but because they're in your area and I'm not, I'd love to meet you someday, but it's a whole different ball game when like you can actually go to mass with somebody and like talk with them and whatever.
Yeah.
I really want you to meet my friend, or like I guess the very best way would be if it were somehow possible. You plan a trip out to Dallas and you go, I'm going to meet you and you're going to meet my friend and you're going to have an in-person connection and we're still going to be friends, but you're also going to have somebody who's like physically there for you, because that's always amazing to like have someone who you can go, dude, can you go get a coffee with me? Can you get a beer with me? Can you go whatever? Because this just happened and I just need to talk it out. Like there's some
Right.
part of like that in-person connection that's so valuable, but that cascade can only happen if there's that community and sort of that concerted effort there. And I think that's not natural to the online space. I think that's something that's going to it can only happen with intentionality. So like
Right.
with Discords like yours, where all these creators are connected and we have these conversations where we say like, hey, team, this is what our point is. This is what our effort is. And like, maybe right now you're playing the small account and in a few years we'll be playing the big account part, or maybe right now you're just sort of trying to figure things out or whatever, but like there's a value and a purpose and a point, whether you're the quarterback or the kicker, you know what I mean? Like, but we've got to acknowledge where we're at, what role are we playing, and then make it happen. And I think that there's a way that can be done on a parish level too. And that was actually the note that I was going to write. Cascade.
Yeah. I think
What are your thoughts on that?
Off-platform communities such as Discord, Telegram, I don't know if Signal's too good for that. Whatever. Discord is where I've found my niche. And that's where my server is. It's where Cross the Tiber is. And especially like, hey, if somebody wants to join into Discord, because, I'm a pretty busy guy, but there's other people in my server that also love this kind of stuff. Some of my favorite interactions that I've seen is two people that at the time, like I hadn't met either one of them in person, and yet I just see this bromance just blossom between them, and it's just like, this is amazing. I love seeing this. Both of these guys were Catholic, but it's just these friendships are being forged here, and I'm kind of not even doing anything except for providing the space. So I think that's a really good thing for creators, or, hey, if you don't think that you have a big enough pull to do that, hey, come into my server and we've definitely got a place for you.
100%. I have to say two things. First of all, I did not write this comment, Kyle. He definitely is talking smack and I'm going to get the credit. Second of all, Kevin, so going back to like how different it is online and in person, Kevin pointed out that there's a lot of anime and online Catholicism. Shout out the Pope Piccolo account. Freaking hilarious. But I think that's totally true and totally accurate. Like, you wouldn't think of using anime as like an evangelization tool necessarily, like in real life, because I mean, how would you, first of all? But also, I think it's an online thing. I also think it's a Gen Z thing. That's something that we can totally give the Zoomers some credit for. I think the millennials walked with the anime, so the Zoomers could run with it, because the amount of anime accounts that do anything. There's some, I don't even know what you call it, but Marcus, my husband, follows like a ton of these accounts, and he sends me the videos all the time of just like edits of Piccolo talking to Gohan about, I don't even know, just like teaching him street wisdom or something.
Right.
But it's just hilarious. And it's interesting to see, like, I think that's the other thing I wanted to come back on for you, clickbait versus like hooks. If you're into anime or you're into Dragon Ball, that can be the hook that you're like, I'm watching this because it's silly, but also I'm learning something, whether I particularly care about it or not. it's a useful way to like pull somebody in. And I think that's the difference between clickbait and hooks. Like Franco, who I'm going to talk to tomorrow, by the way, Franco did a video recently where he was like, I don't know if I can defend Pope Francis this time. And then he goes on to, you think he might say, oh, what did Pope Francis do? And that wasn't it at all. It was like a great video about like praying for him and all of this stuff, especially right now while he's sick. But what he did there was, it was like a sleight of hand, right? It feels a little bit clickbaity, but really what he did was he hooked you in. That like, he didn't lie to you at all, but he did something interesting to get you interested. And I think that further goes back to the sales aspect of evangelization. Like if I'm not, maybe like, I think Kyle. I think Connor was hitting that note really well of like, if you're interested, you're interested. And if you're not, you're not. And Marie kind of said the same thing about sales. Hold on, little sis.
It's okay, baby girl.
No, you cannot be this upset. There you go. Yeah. We gotta be Mama and Evangelista right now. But oh no, it's okay. Shh. What was I just saying? Hook. Oh, so sales. I think Marie said that her husband was saying, like, I don't sell something to somebody who doesn't want it. And that's absolutely true. Like if I want a car, I'm going to go looking for a car, right? But do I want the Toyota or do I want the Chevy? Like that's the kind of the thing you have to sell. I'm not necessarily going to sell you on religion. You have to at least be kind of interested in faith.
Yeah.
But once you have that part going, then it does become like, I have to make this interesting to you. Like, tell me why I want this. Tell me why this is important to me. Why is this valuable to me? And I think that's where like the sale aspect comes in.
Yeah. I had the same conversation with a good friend of mine back whenever I was at Franciscan in like 2011. And that's why he was studying like theology and business specifically, because it's just like evangelization and sales are very, very closely aligned.
Yeah.
And and I think this kind of goes back to something that I said earlier about how just like sales, evangelization, you're never going to have 100%. And you just got to have that expectation. Like Jesus didn't have 100% and you're going to do worse than he did.
Mm-hmm. Man. I'm still spinning on like the interconnected idea and like how you make that happen. What do you think?
Well, you don't make it happen. That's
but you have to be a part of it. You have to be like intentionally with it. It's not that I don't mean it from like it's all on my shoulders. More of the like, if you're going to create a culture around something, there has to be enough people who are like intentionally into it that kind of like turn the tide toward it. And so how do you contribute to that? And I think it goes back to that. Like, the community.
Well, whenever it's just text-based communications, which let's be real, that's normally how we get introduced to people online these days. We very rarely, if you're a YouTuber, you might do a response video or, hey, I see you did this. Let's talk about this. I'll have you on my channel. But even then, like you coordinate that either via the comments or email or DMs, whatever. You just got to remember some things. And this is just some very like practical tips for whenever you're dealing with people online. One, you have to realize that Twitter is not where people go to hear. It's where people go to be heard. So whenever you're interacting with these people, ask questions.
Yeah.
And like genuinely ask them. No, not just like as a deceptive, manipulative tool. No, you need to be asking questions in order to figure out, what does this person believe? Why do they believe it? Because there's nothing that like anybody online loves talking about more than what they believe and why they're right. So that's how you're going to get to know this person a little bit better. And I've had people where the conversation started off just straight up hostile, and I could tell that they were trying to start a fight. Don't take the bait. Ask questions. Learn about the other person. There's so many of these situations where like this is going to get nasty unless one of you is the bigger person, and that's got to be you. don't pour gas on the fire. It's not trolling. I mean, what is it? The Gospel of Matthew, and if I were a Protestant, I could tell you the exact verse where, Jesus talks about how you'll be held accountable for every idle word that you utter. That includes what you're spewing out online, if not even more so, because that stuff's permanent. I can mumble to myself here in this room. I'm still going to be held accountable for it, but it's just only me and my FBI agent that's going to hear it. So yeah.
100%. The FBI agents are all over us, apparently.
Yeah.
I think that this feeds really well into your Catholic Creator Conference, the whole message of get somebody within hugging distance.
Yes.
Speak to that from the evangelizing online standpoint. You kind of touched on it a little bit there, but go deeper.
Yeah. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the Catholic Creator Conference, the entire purpose of it right now, or the main purpose right now, is that we just got to get everybody together. A lot of times, the Catholic media space is just a toxic dumpster fire. It's a total mess. And what we just need to do is just get everybody together in the same room together, so that way we can become real friends. Because, and I'm going to use this example because we've mentioned it on the server before. It's really easy for me to launch a bullying campaign against the uncatechized Catholic whenever I'm behind the safety of my keyboard and the screen, 2 time zones away. I can do that all day long and it's no big deal. However, if I come up and harass you and your husband, who's been trained to build buildings and kill terrorists at the same time, is standing right behind you, well, I'm going to be a little bit more I'm going to be a little bit more intentional about what I say. I'm going to be, try not to be as offensive, needlessly offensive, I should say, because, if I don't, it's probably going to end pretty badly for me in the parking lot shortly thereafter. So,
in the
I'm not saying we need the implicit threats of violence in order to behave ourselves, but implicit threats of violence don't hurt. But no. So, but this is just something where the online communication isn't as real as face-to-face communication. It's not as real as the incarnational. I had a conversation on a different Discord server, and my point was that text alone isn't sufficient for human interaction. And he said, well, if it's good enough for the Holy Scriptures, it's good enough for me. And I'm like, yes, but along with the Holy Scriptures, we were left with a living magisterium, something that we can see, touch, talk to. It might be difficult to get a hold of somebody from the magisterium, but it is possible, and people have done it before. So then that just comes back to that whole thing about our online communications. It has to point to something deeper and more real. That's one of your fruit checks. You will know them by their fruits. So what fruits is your content producing? Are you gaining a cultish following where people will go harass anybody that you tell them to? Well, that's not great. Or are you getting emails like, oh, you helped me find the church and I'm converting because of this? Or, I had no idea that Scripture was so beautiful. I helped discover the beauty of this. That's amazing. These are the kinds of fruits that you're looking for. So, just kind of, yeah. Sorry, I've got control of this too. But yeah, Hamar over here is saying fruit equals Twitter engagement. Yeah, if that's your only fruits, if you're only just growing your Twitter following and not growing the kingdom of heaven, you need to take a serious step back and reevaluate what you're doing.
100%. I think it's funny, just my thought on if it's good enough for the Scriptures, it's good enough for me. Well, the Scriptures were also written by the Holy Spirit. I don't think your words carry nearly as much weight. So let's just place a humble pie with that one.
Yeah.
And then I think, Haley, you can send a letter directly to the nuncio and somebody will write you back. This is true. I've had people send wedding invitations to them and they get a letter back. They're like, thanks, RSVP no. but I also think, sending a letter versus sending an email. I was just talking to somebody else about this circumstance that she's having. And I was like, well, you can write your bishop. And she was like, well, do I send an email or a letter. I was like, I imagine there's an email you can send it to, but I would send a letter, because the effort that it takes to send a letter and then somebody has to physically open your letter, those tend to get more weight and more response in my experience.
So if you want to get better at communicating with people, I now have 4 book recommendations. I just found the 4th one earlier this week. It was just published earlier this week, quite frankly. So if you want to get better at learning how to navigate all this, obviously I disagree with the man on many, many things, but The Art of Disagreeing by Gavin Ortland is something that I would recommend reading. Yeah. Yes, it's a brilliant book. I think that might be the first book that I've ever read in one sitting.
Wow.
And I'm not a fast reader, so it's a really good book. It's like $10. Fantastic. The next one that's probably kind of more in line of that is called Crucial Conversations, and it's written by a whole slew of authors. Joseph Grenny is one of them. I don't know if you've read it.
I have not read the whole thing. I've read excerpts, and I have it on my I need to read this list.
Yes, Crucial Conversations is awesome. The next one is going to be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And I know a lot of Catholics that I know will recoil at the title because it sounds manipulative and bad and whatnot. Listen, it's not the gospel. I'm not going to endorse literally every single letter that's in there. There's a few things in there that make me raise an eyebrow and go, whatever. So take the good, leave the bad. And I trust that if you've made it 2 hours and 40 minutes into this interview, chances are you're a strong enough Christian or Catholic to identify what's good and what's not. And then the 4th one is going to be Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Yeah. He's a retired FBI hostage negotiator. And all of these things are just going to make you a better communicator. And it's just going to make you friendlier. And and not even just that, but it's just going to make you a better husband, a better wife too. Because if you know how to communicate, who knew that that's important in a marriage? Yeah. So, it's going to make you a better friend. But you talked about the handwritten letters. That's something that Dale Carnegie mentions in How to Win Friends and Influence People, of the handwritten thank you note is just, man, it's so good. And now, he wrote that in the 1930s. How much more special is it now if you got a handwritten thank you note from somebody? Okay. It doesn't need a gift card in it or whatever, although those never hurt. But yeah, if you do a handwritten letter, that's always going to carry just a little bit more weight. And if you want to leave a good impression on somebody, do that.
100%. And I think I've mentioned, being in therapy in the past. It was in therapy that I learned a lot of communication skills. Was not raised with too many of them, but I also just saw the efficacy. I'm going to blow my cover on this one. We'll see if Mark ever watches this. But I was talking at one point where I was like, I've talked to my husband about this thing, and we're just at this standstill, and I don't really know where to go from here. And she was like, well, sometimes it can just be really difficult to hear what is effectively a criticism, right? Like what you're doing, you might hear as a criticism. So if instead of just saying hey, you do this, it bothers me, do something about it, please. If you say, oh, let me sandwich this and say hey, you did this earlier and that was so nice, and I love when you do that. I would love if you also did something similar in this spot, kind of like when you did the first thing later, or earlier in this other day that I also noticed. It's wonderful. What I did was I slid in there. I began by complimenting him and saying I love when you do that. And then I pointed out there's another spot where you could be doing, something similar, kind of like when you did do it. Because it says a whole bunch of things. It says, I see you, I appreciate you. I also know that you're capable of this. I know I'm not asking the world of you, which is both a benefit to me and to you, because I'm not calling you stupid or something, or incapable or uncaring. I can see it. And I did that for the first time with him. And this is years and years and years ago, but it went over amazingly, like freaking butter over warm toast. And it worked. And I literally, I was so kind of prepared for him to only hear the bad that I was ready for it to be oh, this again, but it didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you're welcome. And fair enough. And I think my jaw dropped. I was like, there's no way that just works the way that it did, you know?
Yeah.
And it totally did. And it was like little things like that, picking up those skills, and then not only picking them up, but like tucking them and keeping them in like a readily accessible file. It happens so often, whether I'm talking to somebody online or in real life, where I'm listening to you, but at the same time, I'm going, what's going to work here? Like, what tool can I pull out of this toolbox? You know, what is this person feeling? Like Connor and I are talking about, like, what do you want? You know, why are you the way that you are? Getting underneath it. If somebody is maybe feeling like, because I'm talking to them in an apologetics manner, that I'm saying they're stupid, maybe what I need to do is respond with, you know, you said this, and that's such a good point. And I don't think that that's something that a lot of people like really readily recognize or understand. So what I'm communicating now is you're smart, and you're not just smart, but you're very smart, because I don't think a lot of people get this thing that you clearly get. And so you just keep peppering them with the thing that they're essentially communicating that they need to hear. And then doing, you know, like Connor said it in his example, was like, you know, but it could be better, right? And then now we get to talk this way. It's not a manipulation. It's understanding people. You know, who are you? Why are you the way that you are? And how do I get through to you? Because you can resign from something like How to Win Friends and Influence People because it's manipulation, and you will continue on not being as effective as you could be. Or you can put forth the effort to say, like, hey, these work for a lot of people, or these work for these people, or this works in that circumstance. And then you can apply those things to those circumstances, and not just win friends and influence people, but I think I said to Marie, but like, you win souls, you know, like for the kingdom. It's not manipulation. It's recognizing who you're working with. It's like trying to treat a toddler like a 20-year-old. It's never going to work. You need to treat a toddler and a 20-year-old like a 20-year-old.
Yeah, there's this concept that I kind of think of is like emotional currency, and how much do you have with this person?
Yes.
So you know, we keep bringing up Connor. I'm sure he's a great guy. I've never talked to him. If Connor appeared in one of my comments section and started telling me all the things that I'm doing wrong in my video, I'm going to ignore him. I don't know him. You know, I'm sure he's an intelligent guy. I don't know him. You know, we're not friends yet. Hint, Connor. But anyway, sorry. But anyway, but I'm probably not going to do that. Now, on the flip side, you are somebody that I've interacted with quite a bit online. And even, we don't have to go into the specific situation, but when we were at the Catholic Answers Conference, I was out of line, and you called me out straight to my face and said, Kyle, I think you're wrong. And this is what I would rather you, you know, do. And it's just like, because I knew you, and it was just like one of those, yeah, okay, I know you're right. But, you know, you can't do that with a stranger. And that's one thing that I think we lose online a lot, is that, you know, oh, so-and-so said this, you should go correct them. And I'm like, why do I need to? You know, it's like, oh, for fraternal correction. It's like, yes, fraternal correction is important, and I don't want to downplay that, but you can't have fraternal correction without fraternity.
Exactly.
So if I don't know this person, why should they listen to me? And that's something that, like, absolutely every single one of us, when we're interacting online, that's like the first question that you have to ask. Why should this person listen to me? Because if you're being honest with it, if this is a perfect stranger, especially if you have a username that's not your real name and you don't have a face, you are nameless, you are faceless, you are just more text on a screen. And quite frankly, you probably shouldn't be taken seriously. In fact, that's my default, is that I don't take people seriously online until I get to know them. And that leads to another maxim of, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So, so show somebody that you care, become their friend, and then that's whenever the influence, the leadership leading somebody to Christ really comes into play.
100%. And I think too, with that specific circumstance, it wasn't just like you said this and then I said that and you were like, fair enough. You had been on this topic for a minute, and I was like listening to you, and I was like, how serious is this? How deep does this go? Like, where is he going to come out with this? Is this just like going to be like a few minutes thing, and he needs to have his few minutes and then we go on? And it wasn't. It was like this thing that it was like, okay, let's watch how this evolves, and then strike at the right time and strike in the right way. And that was like, wasn't just going to speak up and say like, oh, hey, you're wrong, to use the way that you put it.
Yeah.
I definitely waited it out. And it was that moment of like, do I say something, or is this just like, he just needs to have a minute? And then when it was clear, I was like, he might be like really going on this, and it might actually be going in a not great way. So maybe I need to say, with love, you're wrong. And I think that's pretty much exactly how I said it. And you're like, fair enough.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have gone over well if I didn't let you get it out for a while. And it wouldn't have gone over well if I was like, Kyle, shut up. Okay, like, you're
quit being a baby,
now.
Kyle. That wouldn't have gone over well. No, you handled it very well, and Drew and I still talk about that moment. So
That's good. These are real friendships, people. Real friendships.
Yes.
But there was something other. What did you say? Something about fraternity.
You can't have fraternal. Can't have fraternal correction without fraternity.
Yeah. I think there was a recent event, I guess, that happened that seemed like it was an attempt at fraternal correction, but I don't think it had the fraternity, and it did not go over well. And if anybody is active on Instagram, they probably know what I'm talking about. And it was a cascade of awful events. And like, I'm glad that it eventually like died out, and it was unfortunate, I think, for everybody involved in it. But I think that's honestly the piece that was missing is, well, first of all, there was no like private correction that happened there. It just went like straight to the internet. And it was like, well, if you really think this person's wrong, fraternally take it, privately. But also I think just like the way that it was handled, it wasn't fraternal. It seemed more like a smackdown. You know what I mean? And it was overall like a, oh no situation. And I wonder how, I think, well, Connor may have just answered my own question of like, how do you handle that when you think you see somebody who needs some kind of fraternal correction? Connor said that he doesn't, he phrased it a little bit differently, but he actually said like, I don't attack people, I attack ideas, right? So you're never going to go after the person and say like, you're so wrong for this, that, whatever, as much as you're going to go, sometimes I see this online and that's not right. And so let's talk about it, right? Only to that person, I think, privately as well, charitably as well, can you say like, hey, sometimes you do this, and like, have you thought about it? I'm not sure that that's going over very well. So
yeah. Whenever I was doing a live stream with Josiah, he talked about one time about, I think it's Christopher Nolan. He said in an interview once of like, if you have a problem with me, you should text me. And if you don't have my number, then, well, you don't know me that well enough, and that I'm probably going to disregard your opinion. So, I'm in a position where I've got a lot of people's phone numbers here in this space, and there's a few people out there that I'll text, or, I'll call, or, I'll message privately, etc. Because that's whenever you're really going to get somebody, because, this is straight from that Crucial Conversations book, is respect is like air. When it's there, you don't even think about it. When it's not there, it's all you can think about. So whenever you attack somebody publicly or you correct somebody publicly, now it's no longer about the disagreement. Now it's just about defending dignity. And typically people whenever they're online, you publicly embarrass them by saying, oh, Kyle's wrong, Kyle's an idiot, Kyle's a heretic. Well, now I feel the need to defend myself. And then I guess when you are in that situation, even if the criticism is poorly delivered, I think you should take a step back and figure out what exactly in this criticism has merit. I'm sure you don't mind me name dropping him, just because I actually really appreciate what he did. Kennedy Hall recently called me out, and guess what? He was correct. His delivery was poor, but his point was not wrong. And, and while Kennedy and I might disagree on a bunch of stuff, he had a good point, and I made the correction, and, publicly thanked him for it. And, and as far as I'm concerned, that's that. So, so if you're on the receiving end of that, take it with humility, because all the desert fathers and if you read The Imitation of Christ and whatnot, they talk about, if you really want to grow in humility, there's only one way to do that, and that's to get humiliated.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think there's an element for all of us where like we just don't want to be wrong. Like we want to be, not even want to be right as much as like we want to not be wrong. Like we want to maybe not necessarily be perfect, but we want to, when we put something out and then we have to take it back down, it's humbling, it's humiliating. It's not great. And like, I really wish I hadn't done that. And if I had seen what other people saw, I wouldn't have. And now I'm a fool. And so it's like, I think perhaps back in the day, maybe this is where it comes from. If you made mistakes like that, it was a bit more costly, socially speaking, like the fall from grace or something like that. But I think in today, if you put something out, it doesn't need to be polished and perfect and amazingly curated. I mean, there's something fantastic about beauty, of course, but it's okay to make mistakes from time to time, as long as you own them like that and you handle it basically the way that you just described. Like, I did make this mistake. Here's a repair for this mistake. Thanks for calling me out. And then you move on. You don't drag it out. You don't continue to like self-flagellate or whatever. You just go, whatever. And as long as it's like every once in a while, I think everybody's kind of understanding at this point that like everybody makes mistakes. Everyone has those days, Yeah. It's going to happen. And as long as you own it with grace and humility, I think people are a lot more understanding than they are if you just try to ignore it, or if you don't even move out of paralyzing fear of making a mistake in the first place.
Yeah, one thing, I think this might be original to Scott Hahn, but you see this play out all throughout Scripture, and that's God opposes the proud, even when they're right. So if you're trying to preach the truth without humility, forget it. You have now set yourself in opposition to God.
And in love too. Like, I see it especially on Twitter, X, whatever, all the time. People who are like, I'm going to say something that's incredibly abrasive and borderline offensive, but you know what? It's true. So if you don't like it, deal with it. And it's like, where did you miss the like speak the truth in love? Because it's not enough to speak the truth. If you're going to be abrasive with truth, you're weaponizing truth. And then who wants truth at this point? Like, if that's what it does.
The way I love to phrase the criticism of that is, well, you seem to have mastered the tongues of men and angels.
Nice.
So,
I love dorky Christian like niche humor.
Yeah. Oh,
this guy keeps jumping on my lap. I think he just
that creature that's destined to eternal perdition. But anyway,
cats go to heaven, dogs go to hell. I don't care what any of those old movies say.
Yeah. Well, I think we got 5 minutes left in this block.
We're at that point where I don't want to start a new topic because we'll talk, but I don't know. Let's think.
Well, do we have any questions from the chat?
I haven't seen a single question come in. My chats are not as lively as yours, evidently.
Well, I mean, you got nine viewers now, so that's cool. Brian's like just kind of going crazy with his camera, which is kind of fun to watch.
It's great. Like, it gets in the camera for a minute.
Yeah.
Before Connor got it, he took a selfie with it.
But yeah, I guess some closing thoughts then, I guess. Charity and humility need to be dictating your actions online when you're evangelizing. And you need to be working with God if you're wanting to build God's kingdom. As silly as it sounds, it's easy to forget that you cannot build the kingdom of God without God. And so you need to be rooted in prayer. You need to be leading with charity. You need to be leading with humility. I think it was St. John Vianney that once said that you'll find every virtue in hell except for humility.
Oh,
so if you can master humility, you're on a very, very, very good track. So, and true humility, not just to the point where, I don't know anything and I'm worthless. No, that's not real humility. That's false humility. So, yeah.
/ self. What's the word? What?
Self-deprecation. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna put the F in there, and that's not the word I want to say.
Self-deprecation. No, that's what babies do in their diapers. But no,
I was gonna say we did get these two. Yes,
yeah,
Brian will be on in 3 minutes.
yeah, and Brian's I don't know, his camera's off right now, so I don't know what's going on
He's
with him.
going back and forth. But I have 2.5 cats technically. There's the half cat just refuses to be an inside cat. He was an amazing solo cat, but he was a street cat. We got him when he was 1, and he was eating cucumber out of a garbage can at Fry's. And then we adopted another cat, and he freaking bolted out the door and took a 4-day depression walk in the rain and has refused to stay inside the house since then. He'll just start like marking everything if we try. So he's like the neighborhood cat now. I have multiple neighbors' phone numbers because they're all like, this is your cat. Yes, he does actually have a home. He just won't stay. And then we have the one that you just saw, One-Eyed Wazowski. And then we have Old Lady Luna.
The speaking of cats though, so I think it was actually like the first time that I ever sent Kevin just a mountain of books.
Yeah.
And I made sure that I included a cat toy with it. Like it was like a wiggling cucumber or something like that. And so yeah, find out what the people that you're interacting with, find out what they care about, and make sure that you include that. So that's yeah. So you oh yeah. Kevin, my cats still love the pickle thing. Wonderful. So yeah. But yeah, so as much as I love to poke fun at cats, yeah. If somebody if whoever you're interacting with, show interest in their interests. You're going to get so much further by being interested than you will by being interesting. So yeah, so just keep that in mind.
Amen. All right. Well, Kyle, we have like 30 seconds left, so I'll just cut you loose. Thank you for coming on and having this chat.
Kyle Whittington, you can find me on YouTube. Kyle Whittington. I organized the Catholic Creator Conference, although it is sold out now. But if you're interested in being a vendor or a sponsor, we still have room for you. But that's who I am. You can follow me on X at @KWhittingtonYT. Not because I'm white, but because it stands for YouTube. I didn't know that was a thing until I'd already made the handle. So yeah.
But also because you're white. Okay, bye. Hi, Brian.
Hey.
How are you?
I've never done this setup before.
I know.
I was confused about it, and the mountain time threw me off. I don't even know I don't think anybody knows what mountain time is. My critique for you is to get with the program because 80% of America lives on not mountain time, and we don't know what that is.
Man.
But that's ultimately my fault. We sent the kids away this weekend, and we've been doing date stuff and everything.
Yay.
And I passed out and took a nap, and I woke up. I was like, oh, I gotta go online. I gotta do this interview. And then I sat here for 2 hours just because I didn't know what was going on. But you guys are all of your guests tonight are so intellectual and cerebral and just very intelligent people and articulate. And I feel like such an idiot because I feel like I don't operate that way. I feel like a simpleton sometimes. And, I don't know. I came on here and I wrote out some notes or whatever while I was listening. Who was the guy before Kyle? Connor is his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So while he was talking, I was jotting some stuff down. And I wanted to give a simplistic analogy for evangelism online specifically, Mm-hmm. And I wrote out a few subjects or whatever, like an essay. And, you have the war, okay, which is a situation that we see outside our windows, the enemy, Satan, and all of that. We see him in entertainment and pop culture. We see him everywhere. He's very alluring. People like degeneracy. It's fun. It's exciting. It's, you know, people are pleasure seeking. They don't want to.
Oh no, you disappeared. Where'd you go?
You cut me off.
There
I'm
we
doing
go. You're
so
back.
badly already. She cut me off.
So sorry.
We see it in discussion in the public square with current events and news. And you know, say, you know, you can't, you can only serve one master. You know, you serve Christ or you serve Satan ultimately. And so a lot of people are out there fighting on the wrong side. And that's the battlefield. That was my second point that I wrote down in my essay.
Mhm.
Is that it's an ugly place. It's ugly as hell. Okay, because that's you know, that's what it becomes. That it's meant to shock us and disturb us, and that's what we see online. We see, like Kyle was talking about, how people he wants to get the creators together so that they can, you know, actually bond and meet each other. And online we have like this sort of metaphysical combat zone going on. You know, like it's not really like that. I'm an IT guy, and technology and all that stuff is totally mystical in my opinion. And all of this stuff is just happening out in the ether somewhere. You can't really touch it or anything, but it's definitely there, and it has consequences. And so we see this battlefield, and a lot of it's gotten even worse in recent years. I'm really hoping that the blessed emperor just kidding. I'm hoping that we can change some of the things about the internet, because of the algorithm and everything. Is it requires rage baiting. It requires like our worst qualities. You know, it's like how many people can you piss off today? That's like what the internet is. And if you can't piss people off, then you're just not gonna you're gonna feel like you're not really getting the views or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's very engagement based, and pissing people off is great for engagement. And it's not great. It's not a good thing. So the battlefield's disgusting. It's a horrible place. It's meant to demoralize us. It's meant to make us feel outnumbered, because we look around at the enemy's forces and we feel outnumbered. Feels like when you go on the internet, it feels like there's just billions of people that hate God. And you know, we are outnumbered in a sense, but our side, God, is he's victorious. He'll always be victorious. So it doesn't even matter. And I personally subscribe to dead internet theory to an extent. I feel like a lot of the engagement and stuff, especially a lot of negativity, is bots. I think it's like AI or something. These people, they attack you from anonymous accounts and stuff, and they don't let you mention them or anything like that, like in comment replies. And a lot of times I wonder, like, is this an actual human being or whatever? So it's hard. Online evangelization, like what you were saying earlier with Connor, I think, how or maybe it was with Kyle, how you have to relate it to like in-person evangelization. It was with Kyle, and have like one-on-one communications and stuff with people, and like understand where they're coming from. And I think I think that's definitely something people should strive to do with online action, vigorous Catholic action. I think that's something that they should do. But yeah, it can feel sort of hopeless or pointless, especially when you think you're just like screaming into the abyss, because there's not really. I love cats. Cats are excellent. I've got 2 cats myself. But so the third point was falling in line. We have our war. We have the battlefield before us, and our battlefield is the online battlefield, because that's just, you know, that's like what's going on these days. falling in line, feeling called, saying to yourself, I can't sit idly by. One side is gonna win my soul. You know, it like
Yeah.
either I'm gonna be in heaven or I'm gonna burn in hell. You know, there's no in between. And I really wish there was an in between sometimes, but there's no in between. You have to,
Yeah.
you have to commit to one side. And one easy way to committing to one side is by serving one side. And you know, you can't serve two masters, so you gotta serve God, and you can do that through online evangelization. Definitely suck at it. I'm definitely awful at it a lot of times. But I felt this call after a spiritual reawakening. It was I think All Souls Day or All Saints Day. The priest talked about the beatific vision and like the three what is it? The three portions of the church. You have you have the church militant, church triumphant, church
Penitent.
suffering. Yeah, right. And I don't know, just something about it really sparked something inside of me. And then I went and wrote a novel after that, like a pro-life dystopian novel. That is actually like more discouraging every day with news about IVF and stuff. It's like, wow, this stuff is actually happening. Like, I didn't even know like IVF was even a thing, really, like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that it's actually like out on the. I'm happy that it's being talked about now, because people just they don't know. You know, more babies sounds great, but at what cost? And so that's another thing, is that like falling in line, finding what your calling is. It might be your online activity might be to be a billboard for works that you do, like artwork or writing, theology, or whatever have you. That might be what it is. But you need to reach those people, and people are just online. They're not like out walking around in town anymore. And and I felt that like if I didn't contribute, I'd one day hate myself for not having contributed, you know. And when I would get grilled at work, because I'm in a very Protestant place in Birmingham, Alabama, when I was getting grilled about the church and apologetics from my coworkers, because they had all these misconceptions or, you know, false ideas about Catholicism, I wasn't on fire, you know, like I didn't really have any answers. I just converted. I'm a convert. I converted from like a logical, rational standpoint. I didn't convert because like I had like this deep care and love and everything. I looked at a history book and I was like, the church, like that's just got to be it. That makes sense. And so with being involved online, I realized, hey, I need to learn things. And so it was kind of like a synergy or whatever. It kind of worked together. Being online, being obsessed with the faith, it forced me to learn more, and then I had more stuff to talk about, and that's how it still is. You know, people that want to evangelize online, they don't know like what they're going to talk about when they're first thinking about it. I get messages about it all the time. They're like, what do I post about? I was like, dude, we have 2,000 years of Catholic history, and then we have thousands of years of, you know, like the Old Testament homies. You can talk about so many things, and there's applications in like every aspect of life and history and culture and art. There's just so many things you can do. I don't know how anybody would ever run out of ideas of what to talk about. And then you have the story about the guy who's been sent to purgatory, and it's probably a legend or something. I forget where I even heard this, but he hasn't even entered purgatory yet because he says, I want to read every single thing written about Catholicism and God, and I want to read everything before I enter purgatory. And like the joke is that he's going to be like the last person out of purgatory
Yeah.
because there's just so much stuff. And we're certainly increasing the workload on him by being involved online, because he's going to have to watch all of our live streams too. And
This will be like 4 hours. Good luck, bud.
yeah. So being at war, battlefield, falling in line, getting your holy orders of sorts, being called to this lay ministry. And then you find your job title or whatever, what it is you're going to be doing during this warfare. And personally, I always thought of myself as a propagandist for Christ. And that's kind of like a clickbaity word or whatever, but it's a totally fine word. It's gotten a bad it's really gotten a bad image, propaganda, because we think about the past couple world wars and the little wars in Vietnam and whatnot all over the place, and you just think, oh, propaganda, dehumanizing, it's fake news, it's meant to trigger you. But that's not what it is. Originally, we had the Pope, I forget who it was, I think it was Gregory something,
one of them,
one of the Gregorys. He was like, we need an office of propaganda or whatever, so a ministry of propaganda. And he was talking about propagating the faith, like spreading the faith, spreading informational material.
Keep going, I can hear you. Or yeah, I hear you.
About the faith and about apologetics and stuff, defending the faith. And so I took that and I ran with it. I think personally, I really like posting something that's in contrast to current events and current pop culture that's anti-God. And so we definitely need to be there. There's also this one guy involved online, Hispanidad Translations. He specifically focuses on like debunking Black legends that have been persistent since the Reformation about the Spanish Empire and colonization of the New World. Because and the Inquisition and the Reconquista and all that stuff. Because there's a lot of fake news that's hundreds and hundreds of years old that people still take as gospel truth, and it's not. It's totally false. So we still have a lot of cleaning up to do, even with stuff that's hundreds of years old, thousands of years old. We there's a lot of propaganda that we have to replace with good propaganda that props up our faith in a way that will appeal to others who have a misconception of it. And the fifth point was just continued conflict. There's going to be ruptures and there's going to be problems with relationships and stuff that come up with people that you meet. And I don't know. There's also the point where you were talking about with a bigger page. My page, it was, a smaller page, and then it erupted. And then they totally killed my page in some way where I haven't gained I haven't gone past 134,000 since July, which is totally bizarre to me. There's something up with that. Definitely. I don't suck that bad. Okay. There's something going on. But anyway, there comes a point in your evangelization where you might be promoted or whatever. And I think that I'll always be a propagandist at heart, and I'll continue to do that because it's fun and it's actually kind of easy. But there comes a time when you need to grow up a little bit. And I think the next phase, personally for me, and for any accounts out there that are growing, you need to consider this, is that maybe you need to become more of a promoter, or more a larger gear in the cog, like a larger gear in the clock. You need to, with Catholic Palooza, personally, that's something that I've taken a larger role in for this coming up year. And previous years, I promoted the heck out of it, and bringing people together in person and creating this virtual reality and real physical reality is very important.
Mhm.
It's like coming from thoughts into action, because online a lot of it's very virtual and fake, and it doesn't really go anywhere. It'll just collect dust out there for eternity.
Yeah.
But we need to definitely make things happen in person. And so event planning, speakers, stuff like that, definitely something I'm more interested in now with a larger page, because I can reach a lot more people, and a lot more people will start engaging with these things, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, you just have to be aware that one day you might have to move on a little bit from
Yeah.
whatever you began with. So don't get too comfortable. God will call you to different things. But that's pretty much all I got. I I'm
You
sorry
said
if
a
I
lot. I have a lot
rambling a
of
bit.
thoughts and things. I wanted to let you get your words out, lest I interrupt you again.
Mhm.
But going back to the, um, you said like the internet kind of can bring out the worst, and like you want to like watch the worst and engage with the worst and like just be awful and stuff like that. I hate to say this because I love my girl, but it immediately made me think of Snooki, where like she was popular because she had some kind of charisma to her. But I think a
Mhm.
big part of her popularity was that she was so likable and she was such a mess. Like it was kind of unreal to see
Yeah.
her like getting drunk and falling down on the beach and getting arrested and like all of this stuff. But at the same time, walking into a room and being like, "Party's here!" It's like who doesn't love somebody like that? You
Mhm.
know. Apparently, the people in the house did not at first, but normal people would. And I think there's an element of online evangelizing that when it's done, I don't want to say at its best, but perhaps at its up there at its most elite, there's a way to harness the morbid curiosity that people have and then kind of shape it into something, I don't want to say wholesome, but at the very least true, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you do with your page a little bit, like with your memes and things like that, is you'll take like Wojaks that people use to poke fun at this, that, or the other, and you'll say things even if they're uncomfortably true. I can't remember what it was. It was one of your 7 deadly sins ones that you just reshared today. Um, one of the slides, you said something. I think it was on the gluttony one
Mhm.
where you said, I don't remember what it was, but you said something to the effect of like, oh, I think it was 2 things. So one, it was when you called overweight Catholics fat licks, and then the slide where it was something to the effect of like, um, how do I lose weight? Workout, no, or something to that effect. I don't know. It was something like that where it was just like an obvious like, dude, come on,
Mhm.
response to that sort of thing. And it's like the way that you said it was not uncharitable, and it serves a purpose, I guess, as being actually like slightly inflammatory, to put it
Yeah.
that way. But it's
Yeah.
sort of like, I think it's more like comedy in that way. Like comedians say offensive stuff, but then they get
Mhm.
away with it because what they're saying is true.
Yeah,
You know?
you really it's something that I really have trouble with sometimes, because I want to be charitable, and sometimes I'll even post something or I'll take it down or whatever. I'm like, oh, like that's awful. Why did I a little bit too edgy, a little bit too sharp of a cut. But online evangelization is really difficult in this aspect,
Yeah.
because you have like I have an audience, uh a few thousand people, and you'll post something speaking that's generally true. Comedy's funny because it there's truth to it. Like
Mhm.
whatever however offensive the comedy is, there's truth to it. Usually, sometimes
Yeah.
it's just disgusting and degenerate, but usually there's truth to it. And that's what's funny, is, oh, someone else recognized this. Like
Yeah.
somebody has experienced this. Somebody, so it's laughter. And the difficult part about it though is that I can't control exactly who sees and doesn't see that
Yeah.
joke, and that joke might land badly, especially the gluttony joke. Somebody might have some kind of thyroid issue
Yeah.
or some sort of like serious health problem, but we know that typically us Americans are just a little well fed, okay?
Yeah.
And we're eating really, really unhealthy things, and it's not totally the fatty's fault. Like me, I'm a fatty right now. I'm working on it. But there's a lot of people in food deserts and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But like there's certainly some accountability for most people, and that's why I think the humor works. It's just you just gotta navigate it somehow. And you can't the thing about humor evangelization specifically is that you can't just like put like a disclaimer under every single joke, like
Yeah. It
stop
ruins
being
it.
fat unless you have like some
Right.
health defects that like cause you to be it's like, well, that just ruins, like nobody's gonna laugh. They're just
Yeah.
reading like some preachy nonsense at that point.
Right.
But it's difficult to reach a mass market and then not find that you're really making a lot of people angry.
Yeah.
Um,
Some
for the wrong
of that
reasons.
though, I think is like, so you don't want to be like overtly rude and offensive, like, but what's the intent? If the intent is to make you be like, true, great. But if the intent is to be like, I hope this hurts you, I think that can come across. And I think a lot of people, the trouble with the internet is you can't just choose who you talk to. It's whoever finds your stuff. And so all the time I will have like Protestants in my comments who are like, this doesn't cater to me. That's the underlying message of whatever the heck it is that they're saying. And it's like, yeah, that's on purpose. Like, I'm not talking to you. Not everything is going to please you and feed you and like entertain you. It's not for you. Go away. This is not called Uncatechized Protestant. It's called Uncatechized Catholic. Go away. If it doesn't do something for you, leave. And
it's in the title, dude.
Yeah.
Catholicism. Like duh.
Yeah. And there's just some element too of like, I don't know, at some point you have to sort of take people like assume charitably as opposed to assuming like you're just trying to be mean. Like if you're familiar with my page, because sometimes you get those people too who are like, I really liked what you said until you said this, and unfollow. And it's like, if you're familiar with my page and you can't handle that we have one point of disagreement, that's a growth point for you. Or if you were following my page and you think that I'm being offensive by saying this, even though all of the other things I said you understood, like this is the thing that struck a negative chord with you. Like, again, that's on you. And it stinks because it's like, you want to keep talking to people, you want to keep like reaching people and doing good things. But like at some point it stops being a content, it stops being a skill issue and it starts being a player, like, or I guess it is a skill issue at that point, but the skill issue for the player, not the skill issue for the evangelist. You know what I mean? But I think that there's, as far as who you're talking to and how to speak to them, I think the people that you're talking to are very often not people like your dad. People like John are not commonly looking at like Wojak Catholic meme pages. I think it's safe to say your audience is probably less boomer than
You'd be
most.
surprised what the things he looks at.
I know.
He's a lot more. He doesn't know how to articulate it, but he's a lot more hip than I'm willing to give him credit for sometimes.
He is, but I think most people are not, and so I think his age are not, and so I think there's some element of like who you speak to, and I think that there's, I don't want to say untapped because it's obviously tapped, but like a underserved evangelizing opportunity for people who want to do things like the Pope Piccolo, or to use Wojak's and AI to create multiple slides to like appeal to people. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I guess where did you get the idea that that was going to be the way that you did it? And what about it do you think is efficacious?
What you mean, like the Wojaks or what?
Using like the Wojaks and the AI to create carousels, like predominantly what your stuff is either Wojaks meme type stuff or AI to create stills or videos in a carousel fashion. So
Mhm.
like your posts are almost never like here's a post. It's almost like there's 10 posts in one post, you know?
Yeah,
Look at.
I'm just a very aggressive, competitive person by nature, and that's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
It used to be just single posts, but then like the algorithm changed a couple of years ago, and I had to like go harder and harder, like pump out more
Yeah.
content constantly, and it's a nightmare sometimes.
Yeah.
But you know, it's easy content to make usually, and as if I have like a stream of thoughts or whatever, it makes it a lot simpler. But it's also like with the carousels in particular, like I don't want to have to make a meme that has 5,000 words on it. I want to make, 10 memes that have like, you know 30 words on them each or whatever,
Yeah.
and you can slide through it and maybe one will appeal to a particular person, because not everybody reads every single thing. They'll swipe through and like see something will catch their attention, they'll identify with something. So that's why those carousel posts are more important. And also, you can sort of have like a compound effect, with more posts than one, where it's like multi-layered. There's multiple conversations going on that tie in together in some way. Um, Another thing I wanted to say is that with online evangelization, you have to break out of your cultural bubble in a lot of ways. You will have to investigate content that you otherwise would have never watched or heard of.
Yep.
Like, for an example, and this is by no means an endorsement, but like I made a meme recently, just a couple of days ago, a reel, from I was watching Drewski, and could have been records, which is like it's horrible. I don't it's a horrible thing to watch, but I was just watching clips of it, so I watched some of the show. And there's this part where a rapper comes out, and he wants to share his stuff with Drewski, who's signing record labels. And Drewski's like, do you believe in God? Because, or whatever. He's like, are you religious? Because the guy's dressed gothic. And he's like, no, I don't, I'm not religious. And Drewski says Satanist. He's like, no,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I don't believe in anything. And then Drewski doubles down. He's like, Satanist.
Yep.
Because and it's true, because you serve God or you serve Satan.
Right.
Like that's the, and you don't want to like come out right then and say that to anybody like on the street that doesn't believe in God. Like it's humor, but I took it and I ran with that clip. And an important thing about that with the algorithm is that Drewski has millions of clips out there that other people have uploaded, and other memes and things, and like people's algorithm recognize that pattern and it feeds them certain stuff. So with that particular meme, I'm reaching like a whole different category of people.
Yep.
That like very, very Black, very American, hip hop, rap genre of people that are on the app for that stuff are now getting like a little bit of a feed from Catholic influence. And so that's what's so important about this content. People, they'll trash me sometimes in the comments or the DMs. They're like, why'd you use Homelander? Why'd you use Homelander for this meme? He's horrible. I'm sick of your villain worship or whatever. It's like, these are avenues in which to reach an audience that would otherwise not see it, because
Right.
people don't just like open up their Instagram app, you know, like godless people aren't just gonna be like, I'm gonna go down a Catholic rabbit hole today. They have to be baited in some way that
Yep.
they didn't plan on. And I see comments like that, like what you were saying earlier. I look at that as a positive thing, because that means that my system is working. When people are like, why am I on the Catholic page? Why am I on the
Yes.
Catholic? Why is this Catholic stuff? What's Catholicism got to do with Game of Thrones? I don't want to be here. And it's
Yep.
like, well, you might not want to be, but all of your friends are now going to be brought in, and they're going to see this because you saw it, because you commented on it, and now I'm
Yep.
getting like tenfold evangelization that wouldn't have been possible before.
Mhm.
And so that's really important about the content thing. And that's my defense on using things that come from otherwise degenerate sources, because that's the people that we're trying to reach.
Yes.
As
I
long
want
as it's purified in some way. I've had to
right.
like, cover up some things before with some editing and Photoshop. But yeah, that's it's a good strategy to have.
I walk a fine line with that stuff, and this is slightly going off of the evangelization topic, but earlier I was talking about Miranda Proris and Vigilante Kira, and how it's like, don't watch the stuff, don't engage with it because it's, not good, it's amoral, it's whatever. And I still think that there's a wisdom to that, but I also think it was said at a point where Hollywood then is vastly different from Hollywood now. And so there's some element of like, if you completely shut it out, then you start to actually become the anti-Catholic who's like, I'm in the world, not of the world. And it's like, okay, but if you don't know how to engage with the world,
Mm-hmm.
then you're never ever going to reach them,
Yeah.
And so there's some
that's
like line to walk with, like, this is a freaking trash show. The Kardashians are not somebody that I would like look up to, but at the same time, there's so much to meme from them that
yeah.
it's like I'll watch
And
it and be like,
you
what can I do with
also,
this?
unfortunately, and maybe we need a more up to date encyclical about it.
Right.
But yeah, in order to even like understand what people are talking about, you have to have some kind of idea. And so much of that it's not happening like in books or newspapers or
Yeah.
like in a public square anymore. It's happening on some stupid TV show, like
Yeah.
Kanye West is talking about blank. And it's like, well, I kind of got to know what he's talking about so that I can like respond to these people or give them
Yeah.
a good defense or something. But yeah.
I think other people have said this before, but the internet is definitely like the final frontier in that sense of like,
Mhm.
it's been around for a while now, but it's still in so many ways like in its infancy.
Oh,
And
it's
so to
crazy
figure
now.
out how to like wrangle it and tame it and use it for good is still something that we're all, I think, kind of figuring it out, or how to like maximize the evil if you're a demon and you want to get that out of it. But
We're in such freaky territory now.
yeah,
I don't know if there's ever been a time in human history when stuff was just so rapidly evolving, like
I don't know.
cultures like the Renaissance and everything, the medieval period, antiquity, and even like the Industrial Revolution and stuff. It's like stuff kind of like gradually built on top of each other. And now we have like AI and the internet. And it's just like, supercharged, super
Yeah.
speed. We've got freaking cybernetic. Like 10 years ago, things were kind of normal. And now I've opened my eyes and there's like cybernetic skeletons that look like, or robots that look like they're from, some nightmare. And you have AI and quantum computing with Microsoft. It's like, I don't want it. I
No.
don't want to be in the future. Like we woke up and, a couple of years from now, we'll have hovering cars or something. I'm like, I liked it. I liked it back in, I liked it back in 2010. Can we go back to 2010? That was comfortable or something like that. But yeah, it's kind of a headache. And we also got to figure out who the patron saint of brain fog is, because I've got like digital dementia sometimes. You know, it's not pleasant, guys. There's a lot of it's so much fun, and you get a dopamine rush. Okay, that's just something that comes with it. But there's a lot of problems with online evangelization that just come with the territory as part of the battlefield,
Mhm.
and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. We
Yeah.
gotta fix some things for sure. Like I wrote Stork Sowing Season, and there's this faction called the Retrogrades in it. And I wrote that before I even knew like Timothy Gordon existed. Okay, so it was an original idea from me. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't steal it from anybody. But like the retrogrades, their whole thing is like accelerationism and like the destruction of like modern technology and that kind of stuff. They're like, we gotta turn it back because this stuff's unnatural. And there's actually a Buddhist teaching that I think is pretty cool. It's like the more we interfere with nature, the more, you know, more consequences that come from it, you know.
Mhm.
And it's not Catholic. Of course, there's like we're very reasonable, logical, innovative people as Catholics.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some truth to that, at least, because good grief, you know, there's a lot of things, a lot of problems, a lot of mental health and stuff that exists now that wasn't even dreamed of, you know, just 10 years ago. It's just stuff is crazy now,
Yeah.
you know. So I think that that faction. Sometimes I daydream about joining them. I'm just kidding, but they're not the good guys in the story.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much. You got any more questions?
Well, yeah, I actually was gonna say you brought up the whole like you either serve God or you serve the devil.
Hmm.
I think that phrase turns a lot of people off because I think when you hear it, if you don't have the context for it, you think like, well, you know, you either join my church or you go to hell. And it's like
Yeah.
that, I mean, that is what I'm saying, but that's not what I'm saying. You know,
Mhm.
like it's not about the my team or you're wrong circumstance. I think it's that there are a lot of people who don't recognize that you either serve God or if you're not serving him, who are you serving? Like it is
Mhm.
like there's two options. It's either or. It's one or zero. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wonder how you speak to that from an evangelizing standpoint. Like it's the truth, but again, you want to speak the truth in love. So how do you say that in a way that gets the point across? Because the
Well,
concise way to put it is you serve one or the other. But
yeah. Aside from my rage baity meme,
yeah.
the intention was to have a discussion about natural law, and even refer, and I have in the past referred to virtuous pagans. You know,
Hmm.
I think it was Justin Martyr.
Hmm.
He believed, and you know, this isn't dogmatic or anything, but he believed that Plato had been saved, that he
Hmm.
was like an anonymous Christian or whatever, you
Hmm.
know, that he came to the conclusion and in a fitting way before he had been able to be evangelized or whatever.
Right.
But and I like that idea. And people are going to be like, well, if I don't go to Catholic church every single Sunday, then you think I'm like going straight to hell, that I serve Satan. It's like, well, they're like humans, there's virtue with a lot of people, even people that aren't Catholic or whatever. They may have
Hmm.
some virtues. They're, you know, very, there's still goodness in some people, or there's some goodness in
A lot of people.
a lot of people, and probably everyone has some
Yeah.
goodness in them, because we are created by a good God. And I don't know how to say that in like a theological way, but the the I would just, I don't know, probably appeal to them and their virtue that they have, and be like, well, you're a hard worker, you know, so like you serve God by being a hard worker.
Mhm.
But what what that's saying ultimately is that there's particular things that are like deal breakers, you know. Advocating for abortion, in my opinion, is a big deal breaker. Advocating for certain ideologies that are popular. I don't want to get you in too much trouble, but certain ideologies that are popular today, that's definitely serving Satan. And I think a lot of times it's easy. It's actually kind of easy to discern what, you know, not serving God is because of the effects and things. Like if you see something that has all these negative, it's a pretty simple system. If you see these things, these ideas, when they're put into place, they have all these negative, horrible consequences that come along with them. It's probably not from God, you know, like God, like probably the most harmful thing that God advocates for is like fasting. And even that is actually a really healthy thing, especially something that a lot of people should get on board with today. So I don't know. I guess it just depends on person to person. I would appeal to someone's virtue and just, you know, comfort them a little bit, but also be like, but you know, you could grow in that virtue, and you could you take a look at the natural law and the ordered world we live in, and that should lead you to God. You know?
I think that you sort of accidentally fell upon like a philosophical point there too, arguably metaphysical, but there's this book, I'm gonna drop it, Right and Reason by Father Austin Fagathy. He wrote in this book, I mean, look at who's on the cover of it, you know what I mean? He talks about, you know, like the righteous pagan, essentially. And he talks about how the argument is essentially every person seeks their last end, is what he calls it, the last end. So it's the thing you want more than anything else. And so there are intermediary ends. Like if you're hungry, you want a sandwich. And so in order to get that sandwich, you're going to get up and you're going to walk and you're going to make that sandwich. And so your decision to get up and walk and make that sandwich is so that you can get the sandwich, right? The sandwich is the last end of that series of actions. But the ultimate last end, because we are all oriented toward an ultimate thing, is something that has to be totally satisfying, completely fulfilling, and leaves no room for wanting more of anything. So if any idea of what you have as your last end, whether it's sexual liberation or reproductive freedom or whatever, if it still leaves you wanting for more at the end, it is not actually your last end. If there's always something better or something beyond, that's not it. And so he uses logic to get to the point that man's last end can only be God. And the reasons why he can only be God, he elaborates, or only be God, elaborates on in the book. And he effectively says that you see this in a lot of the philosophers that we still talk about, that they were so close, like so close. And the stuff that they reasoned to was so accurate and so true, because you can get to God through reason alone. You don't need like faith or this like spiritual experience or whatever. Like those things help you, but you can reason alone that God exists and that he's out there and that he would, you know, believe or do or feel or say, blah, 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 whatever. And what he got to was that even if you try to live that life where you like, say you embrace stoicism or whatever, you are always going, you're going to be happier than most people probably, but you're always going to be yearning for something greater, because there is this natural desire within all of us. Like it's the reason why we build amazing things, or like see if we can, whether or not we ought to, you know?
Yeah. Or why we commit to building things over the course of generations.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
Who was it? Dang, dude. There's somebody that was talking about it. I forget who it was. Crap. Well, anyway, whatever. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Tangent.
I forget who it
gonna be the
was.
generational buildings thing?
Yeah, there was an awesome clip that I grabbed of someone. I don't remember who it was.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember it either, so I'm no help.
Crap.
I do know what you mean, though. There was somebody somewhere said something profound about like the build.
Somebody kind of surprising too. I don't know.
It was somebody. I think the gist of what they said was like, you don't build buildings like these cathedrals over generations just because like it's cool. Like you build it for God because you know God, you know He exists. Like nobody is going to labor intensely on a building that they're never ever going to see finished, and nobody alive today is ever going to see finished just because it would be really cool for France or whatever. Like you do it because there's a higher purpose and a higher reason and a higher power. At least that's the clip that I'm thinking of.
Maybe it was Shane Gillis. I don't know.
I would be astounded if it was Shane Gillis.
He's somewhat of a smart guy. Okay.
Well, just the Catholic. Dogs will go to heaven.
Someone said something along the lines like the greatest thing that humans ever built were cathedrals. You know, people spent generations starting from the foundation up and the artistry and everything. They were like, I'm gonna die before I see this finished, you know. But it's something transcendent from our time and place. Tucker Carlson, maybe so, maybe it was. I can't remember. I really can't remember. The brain fog is so bad. But I don't know. I mean, that's, to me personally, and a lot of people are gonna be like, "Well, there's an evolutional reason for that." But like to me personally, I think one of the best arguments for God is just the fact that like our biology, our brain, everything demands there to be God. Where like even if I lost all my faith and I stopped believing in God and something just horrible happened, I lost faith, I think that I would continue to practice the faith and thinking as if I was in the faith still, because I think it's naturally suited for us. I think it's beneficial for us to have religion and that faith. Even at, you know, from like a very basic standpoint, I don't think any of it makes sense that like in a physical, totally materialistic world that we would have this desire, because it sometimes is in conflict with our interest, you know. If it was totally materialistic world, you think like monogamy would be stupid, you know. Poverty would be stupid, like, you know, not, you know, giving your wealth away would be stupid. Like a lot of these things would be bad ideas if it was just a purely materialistic
existence
reality. So I think we're naturally ordered toward God just from our biology alone. And I think that's a really good argument, is that we're like the only creatures that want to ascend, to transcend this nature we have. We have dreams about the beyond, you know. We have dreams about the, you know, what comes after we die and stuff, and that's just crazy. We have ambitions that carry on beyond this life, and I don't think that that's just a motivator. I don't think that's just a biological motivator, an evolutionary thing where it's like we need to give humans some exceptional driving force. It's like, why do we have it in the first place? The animals don't need it. We could just be drones like giraffes are, you know. We could just walk around and do whatever business nature wants us to do. Like this whole God thing is just, you would think it's unnatural because it's not, like it's beyond this world. So I think that's a good argument for that. But I do have to get going.
We're about at the end of our time anyway. So Brian, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and then give me your write-up. That was sweet and unexpected, but it was really good. I liked it. And thank you to everybody who came here, stayed here, came and left. I don't know. I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to this. And for all Marie, Connor, Kyle, and Brian for helping me. All of these people are on Instagram. Some of them are on X. Some of them are on YouTube. You can find them quite easily. I follow all of them. So thank you for coming on. I will end the stream. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye.